Zambia Decides 2026.
I speak to you today, having personally witnessed something I never imagined I would see in our beloved country called Zambia. Last night, heavily armed personnel believed to be members of the Zambia army came to my residence in what I can only describe as an attempt on my life. Shots were fired. My home was invaded. My family was terrorized. Honorable Mutotwe Kafwaya and a few others were shot at in my presence. They sustained serious gunshot wounds. I watched one of my colleagues and fellow Zambians bleed as gunfire erupted around us. This was not politics. This was an attack on human life. I thank God that I am alive today. And my heart is with Honorable Mutotwe Kafwaya and other colleagues who were similarly affected, together with their families, and every person who has been traumatized by what happened. I pray that God will preserve their lives, guide the doctors treating them, and give their families the strength to endure this terrible ordeal. This was an attack on Zambia. Let me be absolutely clear. You may attack me, but you will not destroy my love for Zambia. You may intimidate me, but you will not make me abandon the Zambian people. You may surround my home with guns, but you will not make me pick up a gun against my fellow Zambians. I refuse to answer violence with violence. I refuse to allow Zambia to descend into a cycle of bloodshed. I will fight this battle with courage, with the truth, and with the Constitution, and with the people of Zambia. But make no mistake, I will not be intimidated. Where are my people? There is another matter that requires an immediate answer. When the security operation was at my residence, several members of my team were with us. Today, there are serious concerns about the whereabouts and safety of some of them. I'm therefore demanding that the commander of the Zambia army immediately accounts for every person taken, detained, or encountered by his personnel during last night's operation. In particular, the nation deserves an immediate answer regarding the whereabouts of Mr. Patrick Mwansa, the husband of Honorable Tasila Lungu, Mr. George Sanga, my presidential spokesperson, Reverend Trevor, the Bishop Trevor Mwamba, Richard Banda, my bodyguard, Jackson, Chewe, who are part of the security detail, members of the campaign team, every other person was present at my residence. Where are they? Are they injured? Are they in military custody? If they are being detained, under what authority? If they are being released, where have they been taken? These are not unreasonable questions. Families are waiting, mothers are waiting, children are waiting, wives and husbands are waiting. The commander of the Zambia army owes these families answers. To the commander of the Zambia army, I speak directly to you today. You command an institution that belongs to the Zambian people. The Zambia army is not a private army. It is not the property of a political party. It does not belong to the president personally. It belongs to the Republic of Zambia. Our soldiers swear allegiance to the Constitution and to the people. So I ask you, who ordered armed soldiers to my residence? Why was live ammunition used? Why was Honorable Kafwaya and others shot at? Who is responsible for the shots that we fired? Where are the people who were taken away? And most importantly, who gave the order? The Zambian people deserve answers. To President Hakainde Hichilema, do not allow the uniform of the Zambian soldier to become associated with political violence. And do not allow this country to enter a dangerous chapter where political disagreements are settled with bullets. You are the president of Zambia, not merely for those who support you. Every Zambian, including your political opponent, is entitled to life, dignity, and protection under the Constitution. To the men and women of the Zambia army, to our soldiers, I say this from my heart. Do not allow anybody to turn you against your fellow Zambians. The person standing before you at a political rally is not your enemy. The opposition politician is not your enemy. The man or woman who votes differently from you is not your enemy. Your enemy is anyone who seeks to destroy the peace and unity of our republic. You are brothers and sisters in every province. You have relatives in every tribe. You have friends in every political party. Do not allow yourselves to become instruments in the hands of politicians. To the people of Zambia, I know how many of you are frightened. I know how many of you are angry. I know how many are asking, if they can come from Ndubile, who is safe. My answer is this: we must not be afraid, but neither must we become violent. Please do not retaliate. Do not attack anyone. Do not burn anything. Do not take the law into your own hands. Let us prove that Zambia is bigger than any politician. We will demand justice peacefully. We will demand accountability constitutionally. And we will continue to stand together. They may have wounded one of us, but they will not break us. Honorable Mtoto Kafwaya and others were standing with me when the bullets came. They were wounded, but their courage did not die. And neither will our courage die. I think of their families. I think of every family waiting for news of the beloved ones. I think of my own children and family who have been forced to experience something no family should ever experience because of politics. And I think of the Zambia that we must leave for our children. A Zambia where elections are decided by ballots, not bullets. A Zambia where soldiers protect citizens rather than politicians. A Zambia where political opponents can disagree without becoming enemies. That is the Zambia I am fighting for. My promise to Zambia: I will not seek revenge. I will seek justice. I will not mobilize citizens against citizens. I will mobilize Zambians to defend our democracy. I will not respond to hatred with hatred. I will respond with courage. And I will not abandon my fellow Zambians. If they came for me, I will not run away from Zambia. If they wounded one of my colleagues, I will not abandon him. If they threaten our democracy, I will defend it. I will defend it peacefully, constitutionally, and with the love of a Zambian who believes this country is worth saving.
So joined by the owner of the facility, the PS for Defense, Mr. Amaundu, is here. So Mr. Amaundu, please explain to the people, explain to the Zambians Is Honorable Kafwaya here? And was Honorable Kafwaya shot by your army?
It's a laughing matter. I think we
Into the Zambians. Is Honorable Kafwaya here? And was Honorable Kafwaya shot by your army?
it's a laughing matter. I think we
Amaundu is here. So Mr. Amaundu, please explain to the people, explain to the Zambians. Is Honorable Kafwaya here? And was Honorable Kafwaya shot by your army?
it's a laughing matter. I think
in order to agitate the Zambian people, for the Zambian people to rise up or create a chaos in our country, create chaos in our country. Just today, I'm just hearing that there's a rumor going out there that President Mundubile has been arrested. There's no truth to that. The rumor going out there that President Mundubile has been arrested. There's no truth to that. That there's a rumor going out there that President Mundubile has been arrested. There's no truth to that. And yet some people have taken it as gospel truth in order to agitate the Zambian people arrested. There's no truth to that. And yet some people have taken it as gospel truth in order to agitate the Zambian people to be calm, to be confident in the system that we have put in place. There are so many falsehoods that are being thrown around in our country.
Good day and thank you for joining us. Share the broadcast, share the broadcast. We have very few channels and places where the truth can be discussed without fear or favor, without propaganda or any way of malice. We have this platform just to discuss the truth as it is. That is why they spend a lot of time to attempt to discredit us. You saw that there's been a military invasion at a private home of a leading opposition candidate, and he was treated in this manner, shot at, and he has spoken in detail how, Mtoto Kafwaya was being dragged while bleeding profusely. Mtoto Kafwaya was our Minister of Transport and Communications. If they've taken his life, they are going to provide a state funeral for him and stand guard and salute after treating him this way. I like the address by Brian Mundubile, where he has called for responsibility on this matter and for people to own up where the military were set on a private person and shot at. I am privileged, a rare privilege, that I have Dr. Sishuwa Sishuwa in the house. Dr. Sishuwa Sishuwa, a prominent academic, not just ordinary Zambian, a prominent academic across the world, quoted very, very strongly by international media. And, we are discussing Zambia, and we couldn't get any other person other than Dr. Sishuwa Sishuwa, who has emerged as the Zambian voice, the Zambian ambassador on matters regarding good governance, human rights, and good governance of our country. Let me just introduce Dr. Sishuwa Sishuwa, and I hope that the volume and everything is okay, because this is a very important broadcast. Doc, how are you? And thank you for doing this.
I'm very well, thank you, Ambassador. I'm sorry that we had to do this at short notice, but I hope that I'm quite clear.
No, you are very clear and audible. Doc, let's start with the perspective over the elections that we have. And then we have very specific sad evidence that have led to this today. But the shootout at Brian Mundubile's home stands out. But let me allow you to begin your introduction to where we are. Where are we coming from? And why are we where we are?
We are where we are because of history, a subject that many of us don't take very seriously. But you really can't understand where we are without an appreciation of where we've come from, because the present is quite often a consequence of the past. And so as a historian, I think it's my duty, I would say my role, to make sure that when things like this happen, Ambassador, we try as much as possible to let Zambians know that this is where history as a subject is very, very important. We are not where we are by accident. And I want to start by saying
Yes, Doc. I'm waiting for Doc. I think the link has... okay, I'll be waiting for him. Is in a remote area. I am in a remote area. But let's see how it goes.
Zambia decides 2026.
Bleed as gunfire erupted around us. This was not politics. This was an attack on human life. I thank God that I am alive today. And my heart is with Honorable Dr. and other colleagues who were similarly affected, together with their families, and every person who has been traumatized by what happened. I pray that God will preserve their lives, guide the doctors treating them, and give their families the strength to endure this terrible ordeal. This was an attack on Zambia. Let me be absolutely clear. You may attack me, but you will not destroy my love for Zambia. You may intimidate me, but you will not make me abandon the Zambian people. You may surround my home with guns, but you will not make me pick up a gun against my fellow Zambians. I refuse to answer violence with violence. I refuse to allow Zambia to descend into a cycle of bloodshed. I will fight this battle with courage, with the truth, and with the Constitution, and with the people of Zambia. But make no mistake, I will not be intimidated. Where are my people? There is another matter that requires an immediate answer. When the security operation was at my residence, several members of my team were with us. Today, there are serious concerns about the whereabouts and safety of some of them. I'm therefore demanding that the commander of the Zambia Army immediately accounts for every person taken, detained, or encountered by his personnel during last night's operation. In particular, the nation deserves an immediate answer regarding the whereabouts of Mr. Patrick Mwansa, the husband of Honorable Tasila Lungu, Mr. George Sanga, my presidential spokesperson, Reverend Bishop Trevor Mwamba, Richard Banda, my bodyguard, Jackson, Chewe, who are part of the security detail, members of the campaign team, every other person was present at my residence. Where are they? Are they injured? Are they in military custody? If they are being detained, under what authority? If they are being released, where have they been taken? These are not unreasonable questions. Families are waiting, mothers are waiting, children are waiting, wives and husbands are waiting. The commander of the Zambia army owes these families answers. To the commander of the Zambia army, I speak directly to you today. You command an institution that belongs to the Zambian people. The Zambia army is not a private army. It is not the property of a political party. It does not belong to the president personally. It belongs to the Republic of Zambia. Our soldiers swear allegiance to the Constitution and to the people. So I ask you, who ordered armed soldiers to my residence? Why was live ammunition used? Why was Honorable Kafwaya and others shot at? Who is responsible for the shots that we fired? Where are the people who were taken away? And most importantly, who gave the order? The Zambian people deserve answers. To President Hakainde Hichilema, do not allow the uniform of the Zambian soldier to become associated with political violence. And do not allow this country to enter a dangerous chapter where political disagreements are settled with bullets. You are the president of Zambia, not merely for those who support you. Every Zambian, including your political opponents, is entitled to life, dignity, and protection under the Constitution. To the men and women of the Zambia army, to our soldiers, I say this from my heart. Do not allow anybody to turn you against your fellow Zambians. The person standing before you at a political rally is not your enemy. The opposition politician is not your enemy. The man or woman who votes differently from you is not your enemy. Your enemy is anyone who seeks to destroy the peace and unity of our republic. You are brothers and sisters in every province. You have relatives in every tribe. You are friends in every political party. Do not allow yourselves to become instruments in the hands of politicians. To the people of Zambia, I know how many of you are frightened. I know how many of you are angry. I know how many are asking. If they can come from Mndubile, who is safe, my answer is this: we must not be afraid, but neither must we become violent. Please do not retaliate. Do not attack anyone. Do not burn anything. Do not take the law into your own hands. Let us prove that Zambia is bigger than any politician. We will demand justice peacefully. We will demand accountability constitutionally. And we will continue to stand together. They may have wounded one of us, but they will not break us. Honorable Mtoto Kafwaya and others were standing with me when the bullets came. They were wounded, but their courage did not die. And neither will our courage die. I think of their families. I think of every family waiting for news of the beloved ones. I think of my own children and family who have been forced to experience something no family should ever experience because of politics. And I think of the Zambia that we must leave for our children. A Zambia where elections are decided by ballots, not bullets. A Zambia where soldiers protect citizens rather than politicians. A Zambia where political opponents can disagree without becoming enemies. That is the Zambia I am fighting for.
Everything has been straightforward. Support the fancy.
Hey, thank you for your concern. I'm worried sick. Patrick is missing. I'm getting third-party information that he was with some others and that they were abducted by men in uniform, but I'm not sure if in fact these are men in uniform or if they were just thugs. I hear that one of them has been shot and the other one killed. So worried. It's not like Patrick not to communicate for this long. He hasn't been home and the phone was just ringing. He hasn't been answering. I don't know his whereabouts. I don't know if he's okay. I just don't know anything. I'm blank. And I think at this point I can just appeal to the public. If anyone has any information about Patrick's whereabouts, to just let us know. Thank you so much.
Everything has been straightforward. Support the fancy.
Doc, let me bring you in. We have just recovered you once again and hope this broadcast will go uninterrupted. You have a lot of things to say to our country and, we can't rule out anything. But you are good to go. You had started to explain.
I don't know if you can remind me where it's from me.
Yes, just begin an overview why we are where we are.
Well, I was making the point that we are where we are because of history, a subject that I said hardly takes seriously in Zambia. You can't really understand the present without appreciating the past. And I was making the point that what is happening now in relation to this election is not accidental. It's a consequence of history. And I want to take viewers back to 2006. That year is significant. In the President Hichilema, I first joined active politics. He was the next 15 years. And it was not until 2021 that he won power. Now, this year's election is the election ever that President Hitler has managed. The last two elections that he won, one at party level when he became European president in 2006, and the other at national level when he became president of Zambia in 2021, were both managed by his opponents. Sishuwa Sishuwa was the one who organized the 2006 election in July of that year that resulted in the election of Hichilema to the European presidency. Edgar was the one who organized the 20 election that resulted in the election of the man we are talking about to the Zambian presidency. Between 2006 and 2021, President Hichilema never organized a single election when he was running the UPD. And that he was afraid that an open and credible contest might result in his defeat in the UPA, given that he had a number of elections in between. Now, in other societies, when a leader, a political leader that is, fails to lead their party into government, they step aside. That is what is done in the established democracies. In our case, we don't have behavior of continuing to contest elections despite successive losses was not unique to him. It is characteristic of political culture. It's also possible that he was very afraid that he could have been defeated if he had organized an open contest. This to demonstrate the point that his lack of commitment to democratic politics, established by that record, explains why, for somebody like me, who is a keen reader of Zambian politics, because that's the only thing I've studied, I was not President Hichilema weakened oversight bodies, tilted the level playing field.
Yes, Doc, are you there? It's strange that when we are hosting an important man like him, he has good network, I have good network, and we are having these interruptions. Let me just play a transition, then we get Doc back. Doc, yeah, this is what we are going to do. Let me put your picture, then you speak from the phone. In case, because on the phone you are extremely clear. Just hold on. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we are going to do. I'm going to call Dr. Sishuwa Sishuwa, who will speak from his phone. The video link could be having difficulties. Let's see if I can just get him on the line and he explains from the line. Doc, we are going to do something unorthodox. We'll use the phone. In case the video link is interrupting, yes, the phone is much, much, much clearer.
Sure.
Yeah, please proceed with your thoughts.
So I imagine that I'm live?
Yes, you are. You are.
Okay. No, I was making the point. I don't know where, again, you lost me because I don't want to leave the listeners behind.
Yes, Doc, you are just explaining that as a student and teacher of history, you want to refer to history and arrive at a decision where people understand why we are where we are. So you began to illustrate our history.
Yes. So I was making the point that we, as a country generally, we are a country that really has very little regard for history. And it saddens me greatly because we can't really understand where we are without understanding our past. And I started by locating the 2026 election within the context of history to say that it was the first competitive election that President Hakainde Hichilema has ever managed in his political life. The 2006 election that brought him to the helm of the then main opposition, United Party for National Development, UPND, and the 2021 election that secured him the Zambian presidency, were both organized by his opponents. Now, precisely because those elections were credible, Hichilema won. But between 2006 and 2021, he never, even once, held a democratic election in the UPND. Perhaps he was fearful that an open contest might lead to his ousting in the wake of repeated electoral losses in 2006, in 2008, in 2011, in 2015, and 2016. The result of that demonstrated lack of commitment to democratic politics. And I'm a keen observer of Zambian politics, but this is the only thing I've studied and I know political history. I was not surprised that President Hichilema, once in power, weakened oversight bodies, tilted the level playing field, he entrenched his advantage over time, and generally presided over an undemocratic administration, which employed authoritarian tendencies to arrest our constitutional freedoms and undermine political competition. Amnesty International, I think, spoke to that. I think it was 3 days before the election, on 10th of August. They issued a damning report that demonstrated how the Hichilema administration has undermined the civil liberties of citizens, particularly the rights of freedom of association, of assembly, and of free speech. That record, Ambassador, explains why I repeatedly invited President Hichilema ahead of last Thursday's election to pledge publicly that he would peacefully concede defeat and hand over power where he just held. My apprehension that Hichilema might refuse to accept defeat and spare the country from possible civil strife arose from the absence of safeguards that had previously secured peaceful transitions whenever an incumbent lost to an opposition challenger and attempted to manipulate the outcome. The first of those safeguards that were lacking this time around is the absence of a former president who, in the event of loss, would advise the president that there's life after State House. If you remember, Kenneth Kaunda helped ease the transition in 2011 when Rupiah Banda lost and tried to resist conceding. Now, I know that some of the supporters of RB often projecting as somebody who just gracefully conceded defeat. That wasn't true.
Yeah.
The reality is that Kenneth Kaunda helped ease a transition in 2011 when Rupiah Banda lost and tried to resist conceding, and he did so with the help of another ambassador that I'm going to discuss before long. In 2021, it was Banda himself who helped to ease Edgar Lungu out. Now, Lungu, in my view, may well have done the same thing if he had not died and had not been a candidate in this election where Hichilema to lose and resist leaving. That's what I thought. But that was the first safeguard. The fact that we headed into this election without a former president who could talk to the incumbent and say, hey, these things happen. Look at me. I lost power, and yet I lived comfortably after leaving State House.
Yes.
The second safeguard was the presence of Western diplomats who, coming from countries that, at the time at least, boasted having presidents or prime minister who supported democracy across the world,
yes,
encouraged affected incumbent president to peacefully concede defeat rather than seeking to change the election result. In 2011, Ambassador, the United States ambassador to Zambia at the time, Max Torella, combined with former President Kaunda to get Rupiah Banda to accept the result. I know these details because I spoke to both men and I discussed some of these things in my scholarly work. In 2011, rather in 2021,
yes,
the then UK High Commissioner to Zambia, Nicholas Woolley, and the US Charge d'Affaires at the time, it was a gentleman named David Young, because if you remember, the substantive ambassador, Daniel Foote, had been expelled by the Zambian government following a very legitimate criticism that he made against certain actions. So the person who was in charge when we headed into the 2021 election was David Young.
yes,
Nicholas Woolley, the British diplomat, and David Young had, before the election, combined shadow diplomacy with public condemnation of human rights violations and the lack of a level playing field ahead of the election itself. But when the election came and President Lungu lost and he tried to resist, they spoke to him, encouraged him to concede defeat, which he, in the end, he did. Because I had several interviews with President Lungu as part of the book project I'm working on.
yeah,
There were many forces in the PF who felt that he shouldn't throw in the towel so easily. But it was having this kind of diplomacy that really helped. Of course, their efforts were aided by the role of former President Banda, as well as by Koroma, the former president of Sierra Leone, who was leading one of the election observation mission, and Jakaya Kikwete from the former president of Tanzania as well. I spoke to both men as part of my research quite extensively. It was, in my view, precisely the absence of this crop of Democrats supporting individual Western diplomats that made me uneasy ahead of this election. In addition to the growing disinterest in promoting democracy among great powers such as the United States, since the election of Trump, and the European Union, as well as regional powers such as South Africa and organizations such as the African Union. The US had no ambassador going into this election following the departure of the highly regarded Michael Gonzalez, who many Zambians would remember, spoke out against corruption, defended democracy, and sometimes, at least in my view, seemed to care more for Zambia than many Zambians do. He was very passionate, Michael Gonzalez, and sometimes I felt that we really didn't do enough to support what he was trying to do. The Swedish ambassador, what's his name, Johan, I think, Hallenborg, departed Zambia on election day itself. I'm aware of that fact. So we couldn't rely on the US, we couldn't rely on the Swedish. Canada has a new High Commissioner, I think it's Corey Van Gaal, if I'm not mistaken. But Corey is quite new, having only arrived in Zambia on the eve of the election, I think in July, which was last month. So it's understandable that the Canadian High Commissioner may not, in my view, have felt that were anything were each about to lose. Maybe the High Commissioner concluded that it was better to leave that responsibility to other established diplomats to persuade him to leave. Mm-hmm. The British High Commissioner, Rebecca Terzon, has shown little interest in political and human rights questions since she succeeded Nicholas Wool in January last year.
Yeah, she's not as active as Wool was.
In fact, in my view, I think she's probably the worst British ambassador when it comes to defending human rights and democracy since Zambia returned to multi-party democracy in 1991. So you really couldn't count on her as somebody who could stand up to defend these kind of issues. And I watched her after she came.
Yes.
But I gave up when I noticed that maybe she was here almost like it's almost like a gap year. Maybe you can say gap years since for her she'll be here for more than a year. That is in Zambia. So I couldn't count on a British High Commissioner. And then following the other diplomat you could count on is the United Nations through the leadership of that body. Normally the United Nations resident coordinator in any country is the highest leader of the UN. And we had Madam Beatrice Mutali, she's Malawian, who arrived in Zambia in early 2022. So her period in Zambia actually coincided with the first term of the Chilima presidency. But she remained silent on several human rights violations that occurred throughout the last 5 years, and which Amnesty International documented in a report that was released, as I said, 3 days before the election. I saw recently, I think the UN was, it was a day to today or yesterday, I'm not sure exactly, but there was a statement where the UN were very quick to dismiss a disinformation post that suggested that they had commented or done something about the elections. That efficiency that they showed in denying a disinformation post, which is fine, I think they did the right thing, was not there. That energy, that interest, that efficiency wasn't there over the last 5 years during the leadership of Mutali, when the human rights violations were happening. The role of a resident coordinator ambassador, you would know this because you have served in diplomatic circles, is to identify potential seeds of conflict that could lead to chaos. Mm-hmm. and the undermining of human rights, in my view, is such a serious matter that would have attracted her attention, but she didn't. I'm saying all these factors, when you put all this context together, It left me gravely concerned, especially after HM declined to make a public undertaking that he would concede if he lost the election, that we didn't have that safeguard in terms of international players or actors who could persuade him to say, "Sir, please leave." The third and final one, at least in terms of what comes to mind very quickly, safeguard, was a depoliticized military that stayed out of politics, thanks in part to the leadership of professional and non-partisan military commanders who exercised greater restraint in deploying their institutional prerogatives for partisan goals. So ahead of the election that we just had, Hichilema ended the non-partisan character of the Zambia army when he sacked the highly regarded Lieutenant General Sitali Aliguzwi from his post as army commander, and he hired a corruption-accused person, Geoffrey Ziele, as his replacement. Now, Ziele had been retired, if you recall, in national interest in 2016 by then President Edgar Lungu for alleged partisan conduct in favor of the UPND. After the 2021 transfer of power, Hichilema recalled his fellow Tonga from retirement, promoted him to the rank of Major General, and appointed him Deputy Army Commander. That was in 2021, following the election. To obscure the long-term political motives behind the appointment, the president, if you remember, chose Aliguzwi, who was then Deputy Army Commander, having been appointed by Lungu in 2019 as head of the military. Now, it was the first time that both the army and the deputy army commander were coming from the same region. This is very important because sometimes, again, we don't really pay attention to the issues of representation and diversity. But the appointment of Aliguzwi was widely seen as merit-based because of his professionalism, his commitment to integrity, and the respect that he commanded among soldiers. That same thing could not be said about Ziele, who was, if you remember, soon to be implicated in a major corruption scandal, one that forced the Anti-Corruption Commission, even in its compromised form, to place the deputy army chief under investigations. Ambassador, like most cases of corruption involving members of Hichilema's inner circle, that case, you recall, went nowhere.
Yes.
But the critical point is that disturbing history about Ziele, or murky history, explains why opposition politicians at the time rejected Ziele's promotion as army commander when Hichilema elevated him to that role. But, in what is his trademark response to public concerns, the president simply ignored those objections. So, when removing Aliguzwi, the president gave no reason for the decision. But his comments in the aftermath of the changes he made to the army leadership, alongside the public conduct of Ziele since his appointment, provide a clue that we can use then to understand what's happening now when we come to the present. It is that he was preparing the army to play a partisan role in politics, and especially in the conduct of the election that we just had. I'll give you an example. In April 2025, I think it was in Kavu when he was commissioning about 500 new soldiers. The president appropriated the country's military as his fighters. He ordered them to start dealing with civilians, and when doing so, to be in a lethal mode. If you check news diggers, there's a story where he says, "I want to see my soldiers who are polite in the communities, who know how to handle civilians." But when duty calls for lethal side, they mutate into that mode as well. And he said, "I believe you got my message." If you go to YouTube or the NBC Today page, what you find is the president actually looking at Ziele when he was making those remarks. And that was, I think, 6 months after the explained dismissal of Lieutenant General Aliguzwi. Now, given that soldiers don't handle civilians, because the maintenance of law and order is the responsibility of the police. The president's remarks, Ambassador Mwamba, were generally seen as a veiled invitation for the army to get more involved in politics and to deal decisively with any pre-election signs of political dissent or potential, post-election unrest. And I think it's fair to say that Ziele heard that message because since his appointment, he has repeatedly threatened citizens, including critics of the president. He has made partisan speeches. He has enabled the deployment of the army for what are essentially police functions, precisely the kind of things that his predecessors would not have done. If you remember, before those small-scale miners were killed in Fumbo, Ziele held a public briefing where he said, he threatened that the army would what language? He used a very, very terrible language to the effect that the army would fumigate them, in reference to what they planned to do with in relation to small-scale miners. And then you had those deaths that occurred. There was even a video that was circulating recently where they showed these soldiers beating, very violently and in a very crude form, one of the affected small-scale miners. Again, here is an army general who gives those kind of indirect reasons, basically ordering soldiers, we are going to do ABC. You can't blame the soldiers when they interpret that as an invitation to engage in violent contact. But these are people in any case who are trained to deal with civilians. So I saw the army response actually when people raised these concerns recently to say, we dealt with those soldiers, we disciplined them for that kind of indiscipline. But you see, even the language that was used in the statement was very problematic. That wasn't indiscipline. It was criminal conduct. It was violent conduct.
Yes.
But the critical point, a more critical point is that you can't simply fire the junior officials because soldiers carry orders. In the army, you don't need persuasion. It's orders that work. If I tell you do a run, you don't have to ask me in which direction. Just run. So the soldiers are carrying out an order. If their commander gives them an order, go and do this, and they go and implement those orders. You can't simply dismiss the junior soldiers and leave the commander who gave the order. And if Hichilema was really committed to ensuring that what happened was unacceptable, he would have dismissed Ziele because he's the one who made that those directives. But he didn't do so, suggesting approval, as I said, because Hichilema had encouraged the military to be lethal when dealing with civilians.
In fact, Doc, just on that small matter, which is very big, when Ziele said he was going to fumigate and exterminate, and despite the uproar from all stakeholders against such extreme language, there was no action done on Ziele.
No, there wasn't, because he was doing the beating of the president. As I said, the president encouraged soldiers to be lethal, and he was looking at Ziele when he made that remark in Cabo. I remember this because I watched that event, and so Ziele knows that the only way he can secure his job is to support the man who resurrected him from retirement, even if this means undermining the long-established non-partisan character of the Zambia army. You remember when the president was stoned in Chingola, Ziele again intervened to issue warning that they were going to flush out those people who had done that. That's not the responsibility of the military. If citizens express discontent by throwing stuff at the president, the solution is not for the army to get involved and identify those who are responsible. It's a policing matter. And there was no evidence, for example, that the police had failed. But again, that speaks to how Ziele sees Hichilema as the man who rescued him from oblivion and brought him back. He knows that if Hichilema goes, even he himself goes away. Altogether, those three factors, that is the absolute, those three safeguards, alongside Hichilema's extremely dangerous and reckless lack of restraint, enabled my apprehension, Ambassador, ahead of this election, that the president might resist leaving power if he lost the Thursday's election. Now, if you remember, again, history here matters. If you remember, HH stood in the queue to becoming president of Zambia for 15 years before voters finally removed him from it in August 2021. He lost, and I said several times, but the fact that he didn't go away demonstrates how badly the man wanted this job. But it has taken him only 5 years in office to display his unfitness for the role. And I'm very happy that Zambians voted for Hichilema, in my view, because before the 2021 election, one of my quarrels with President Lungu and the one who came before him, Michael Sata, was the lack of diversity in public appointments. I criticize Michael Sata, and the records are there in the post. I criticize President Edgar Lungu. The records are there in the news diggers and other platforms. To say, I don't like how you are marginalizing our brothers and sisters from southern province, the Tongas, because when to be Tonga under PF, it felt like you were second-class citizens. I didn't like that because, you see, every Zambian, in my view, should have the opportunity to feel that they have access to all the opportunities that are available to other groups. For example, not being discriminated against on the basis of their ethnic identity or area of origin. And so at different junctures, Amos Chanda would remember this because at one time it happened at the Kapingila house and even Sunday Chanda. I said, please tell the president we don't like how he's treating our brothers and sisters from southern province. I'm not Tonga, but I'll be the first one to defend those groups, any group in Zambia that is discriminated against by those in power. So I was very happy when Hichilema was elected president in 2021 because I didn't want a scenario where people would have said that Bembas and Easterners, for example, don't want a Tonga to become president. That is not good for national unity because there should be no group that feels that certain positions are out of bound for them. And my happiness increased because of the fact that Hichilema won the 2021 election on account of the support he got from the usual suspects, which is Western Province, the Lodges where I come from, Southern Province, Western Province, but more importantly, on account of the support that he received in Bemba-speaking provinces of Muchinga and Northern Agwas Wapula, and in the Chewa-speaking Eastern Province, as well as the Urbanites supporting Lusaka under the cover belt. So on the basis that he is a Tonga finally making or succeeding, where so many Tongas had failed before, Mazoka being one of them, Haring Kumbula being the other one before that. I was very, very happy, and of course, Kevin Musokotwane in relation to the leadership of UNI. So I was very happy that we broke that barrier, because I didn't want to grow up in a Zambia where, people would have felt Hichilema is not good enough because he's Tonga. No. The Zambians actually have repeatedly demonstrated that whenever the country's future is at stake, they come together and save the country from a leader who is pushing the country in a very wrong direction. So I was very grateful that that happened in 2021, because now we are not. Can you imagine what would be said if Hichilema had never become president? Many people will be saying, "Oh, if only we had tried that one, things would have worked well." Hichilema himself threatened to become a better leader than those who came before him. I think it is the Chewas. I'm not sure if that's correct, but certainly an Eastern group that has a proverb that says the best way of proving the potency of a man who threatened that he can achieve an election or even impregnate a woman is for the woman to address for that man. So you could equate that
in Bemba, yes, it's a Bemba saying ukupenguila chivola, something like that. I will remember.
Yes. So for me, I equated what happened in 2021 to that saying. To say, in 2021, Zambians undressed for Hichilema to say, "Hey man, can you prove your potency? We are ready to give birth." 5 years down the line, our stomachs are still flat. You can't say we are not fertile. No, there's a problem. The problem comes from outside. Our fertility is in the legendary land. And I say that point to make the fact that the election of Hichilema for me was important because it taught Zambians that it doesn't matter where the leader comes from going forward. We shouldn't look at choosing leaders, say, oh, we can only choose a Tonga or a Lozi or a Bemba or an Easterner. What matters is their capacity, their vision, their character, where they come from, notwithstanding. So here comes Hichilema, he gets into power. And 5 years down the line, he has, in my view, proved his unfitness for the role of president. I say this because...
In fact, Doc, just explain to us, after the narration you have given of why it was important for Hichilema to become president, what has it been in the values that especially you were espousing and promoting? What kind of a president has he been the last 5 years?
All considered, I would say Hichilema has been a failed political experiment. Because when it comes to bigger national issues, Ambassador, such as safeguarding our cherished democracy, getting the best out of Zambia's mineral wealth, respecting the constitution and the rule of law, fighting corruption beyond rhetoric, genuine promotion of national unity and equitable distribution of appointment to public service positions, creating a professional civil service, sorting out the cost of living crisis and the deplorable conditions of life for most Zambians, the president has lamentably failed. I hear people saying, no, but he has done well on CDF, on free education, on the social cash transfer, on the debt restructuring. It's very true, and I commend him for that. But we are talking about the bigger issues here that I mentioned. If you think about our democracy, one of the reasons why I voted for Hichilema in 2021 because I wasn't happy with the state of democracy under Edgar. Edgar shut down the Post newspaper. He closed movie TV. He restricted civil liberties, including passing the Cybersecurity and Cybersecurity Act on the eve of the 2020 election. He did many things that undermined civil and political rights. I didn't like that. Zambians love their democracy. They love expressing themselves freely. And when a leader begins to threaten them, they retreat into silence because they know that in Zambia, voting works. We are going to teach you a lesson at the next election. You see, Ambassador, it's not good in a democracy when citizens are forced to remain silent even when they should speak. When I was growing up in Western provinces, and we have the Zambezi River there, we used to go, fishing on the Zambezi. You get into a canoe, a banana boat kind of canoe, and you are on the canoe. You are fishing on the water. There are a lot of hippos in the Zambezi. My grandfather used to tell me that when you are in water and there are hippos around, you should not be afraid when you can see a hippo sticking its head out because you can see where it is. You should be afraid when a hippo goes under the water because you don't know where it is. It might appear where you are, just hit the canoe and you capsize. That understanding or wisdom, in my view, can be applied to the workings of democracy. If you are a democratic leader, you are better off knowing what the people think. Let them speak freely because then you can learn to say, this is the public sentiment, and this is what I must do to change them. Because sometimes you may think you are doing this thing for the good of the people, but if the people actually don't understand it that way, they can vote you out. And when they do that, you don't understand why they have rejected you because you thought they loved you. So we reached a stage under the PF where Zambians reached that level, and I felt, okay, let's try somebody else. Maybe he can come and restore democratic freedom. That's what Hichilema told us to do.
On issues of freedom, Doc, on issues of freedom, you were literally a very, very strong critic against the late president, and but you traveled from South Africa and you came to Lusaka to vote. You even appeared on various radio stations. Have you done the same this year? Could you have traveled to Zambia to go and vote and speak in person in Zambia?
I would have been arrested, at the airport. If you remember, even under the PF, I hope I'm saying this not to make you uncomfortable because I'm saying it in the spirit of transparency. If you remember in 2021, I think 2021, I wrote a very critical piece against President Edgar Lungu's administration in the Guardian, and he reported me to the police inspector general to say, I should be dealt with. I wasn't very unhappy with that. What made me particularly sad was when I think in one of your postings you alleged that my activism may have been, particularly the piece in Non-Garden was paid for. It was just that reference to the idea of paid for that made me extremely uncomfortable. And I remember writing to you to say, can you please retract that sentiment? I don't mind it when people call me names. I'm used to that because what matters, Ambassador, is not what people say about us. It's how we respond to what has been said. It is the weight that we attach to the sentiment that people have said. So when you said my article was paid for, I felt very, very uncomfortable because I can tell you, Ambassador, that never in my life have I taken a ngwe from a politician living or dead for the work that I do. Never, not once. And I'm saying this honestly. So when that didn't materialize, that was when I proceeded to know I'm going to sue the ambassador so that he can prove in the court how I got that money. Because I wrote for Non-Guardian since 2019. Yeah. Just like I wrote with the news diggers in 2017 when they were established for free. For news diggers, I even brought people like Kanishas Banda, Roy Clark, Kachionda Kanyama, Yinka Wachipanda, and others as part of giving them the freedom to have a good start. Again, I convinced my colleagues, let's do this for free. I believe in a better Zambia. And you remember that after the election, when that what happened actually was that international colleagues supported my position. When the invader of Zambia, disowned me as not their employee, under pressure, of course, from the PF at the time. But what happened most was that after the election, you reached out to my lawyer, Musa Mwenyans, and sought an out-of-court settlement. Yes. Again, for me, it wasn't personal, I just felt...
I remember that.
Fine. I asked Musa to say, I asked Musa to say, what is the lowest amount of money that one can get from a court of this kind, a civil case of this kind? Musa said, well, why the lowest? You can get more. I said, no, I'm not interested in the money. For me, I was defending a principle to say there must be civility in public debate. So I said, it's 30,000. I said, fine. You write to Ambassador Mwamba that I accept the proposal that we should have this matter settled out of court, on condition that A, he pays 30,000, B, he apologizes, and C, he settles the legal fees that have accrued so far. And you very generously were agreeable to all those conditions without a fight, and that's how that matter ended. But even when I got the money that you sent, I gave all of it to charity at Angela Miandasa Orphanage in Kawata, because I was demonstrating a point that it wasn't personal for me, it was about the country. Ambassador, I do what I do not because I want to gain anything out of this, but because I come from a very poor background in Senanga and understand, the effect of poor government policy that condemn many of our rural kids to poverty. So what I do, it has in so many risks that I don't do it for any financial interest or any political interest or any personal interest whatsoever, for example. I do it for the good of the country because I believe a better Zambia is possible. Under the UPND, I have faced similar challenges. Just recently, for criticizing each of them, they petitioned my employer in South Africa, Stellenbosch University, asking them that they should kick me out or censor me. I didn't even know that they had done this until the university informed me to say, we received this petition from a supporter of the Zambian government named Akashambuta Masheke. He sent an email to the university saying that my criticism of each of them has undermined the democratic institutions in Zambia and that I should be dealt with. That email that Masheke sent to Stellenbosch University was copied to State House showing that it wasn't even his idea. It came from each of them and his friend at State House. Again, that shows the lack of democracy that has happened at a personal level. And of course, Masheke was very happy to broadcast on his Facebook page that they have petitioned the university had said they would respond, and the university didn't respond in a very detailed way. I learned of this subsequent to their response. I didn't even know that, but they told him that, listen, here we respect freedom of speech, and there's nothing they're going to do to Sishuwa because we respect academic freedom, which is the cornerstone of the South African Constitution, is constitutional right to free speech. Again, this shows you that the lack of democracy, respect for democracy, wasn't just limited to the debate. It has continued even under this administration. It has even worsened, in my view, in the sense that for Hichilema, he is the guy who comes and says, I'm going to abolish cybersecurity as my first act in office when elected. What does he do? He actually makes a more repressive provision of the law. He is the person who comes and says, I'm going to expand democratic freedoms. What does he do? He dusts off colonial era legislation in the penal code to arrest everyone. You are in the US at the moment, if I'm not mistaken. Why?
Yes, I am.
Because of lack of freedom. I remember what happened to you. You went to a car station, somebody comes there that assaults you, you report the matter to the police. Rather than dealing with the report, they turn it upside down and say you're trying to harass a policeman.
Yeah.
I don't have to like you, Ambassador, to defend your rights. That's why I actually appreciated you. I appreciate your platform. Because in the past 5 years, what you have seen is a scenario where the kind of media like news diggers, and other platforms that were very essential to giving platform to critical voices to contest the democraticness of the PF, they have all been co-opted by Hichilema. And the platforms like yours are really important in giving voice to ordinary people, because that space where the media could operate freely has been repressed by an administration that is really squeezing the media through lack of advertising revenue, and as we have seen in the case of some co-optation. Platforms like yours, in this case, become very, very important. And when I was asked, can you feature on this ambassador's platform? I said, of course, I'm very happy because he is doing very, very important work for our democracy. Can you imagine what would have happened if this platform wasn't there? So many people have brought to this platform that have shared with us wonderful aspects. But it's really your initiative, it's your idea, and I must commend you most honorably, Ambassador, for what you have done.
No, I'm very grateful. I'm very, very grateful. Now, imagine why I highlighted that personally. Because, I was aware of the harassment against you by the Patriotic Front. And like you stated, that when we differed on one article, I proceeded to accuse you, of sedition and reported you. A matter like you've narrated, we since settled. Can you imagine the people you fought for? You were ready to go to prison for sedition. The people you put your life on the line. You are even far afraid than you were against the government of President Lungu. You can't even travel to go and vote. I think that's the point I was trying to illustrate, that this is how far our country has fallen.
I think the two quick points there. The first is that I didn't fight for Hichilema on the UPND. When you defend democracy and what rights had I do, it's very common for opposition parties to think that you are with them. Or that you're supporting them.
Yeah, because they're benefiting from your work.
That's correct. And I don't mind them benefiting, because for me, if a leader is doing something that promotes the public good, and whether my work helps them achieve that, I'll be very happy with that. And I say it's for our collective good. That's not to say that Hichilema himself and his people didn't seek help. If a leader comes to me and says, can you help us on ABC because you know this and this and that, I will help them. I've never done my way from anyone, whether it's a leader from the church, whether it's civil society, whether it's a politician. What I've never done ever is to charge anyone for the kind of advice that I give them. There are many things that I can say about Hichilema. I know he likes telling lies, but one thing that he can tell you himself is that not once did I ever get to accept away from him the kind of help that I rendered to him. I didn't render this to him because I was seeking any personal favor from him, none at all. One of the reasons that explains why I've been able to remain objective is because I don't have any interest, outside public interest, to protect. It's very easy to be independent and objective if you are just doing this for the public good. Even Edgar Lungu, when he lost power, for me it wasn't personal. I demonstrated that when his rights were affected, I would stand up for him and defend him. Even Hichilema, if he became former president tomorrow and is mistreated, I would defend those rights, because it's not personal to me. It's about the principle that we should protect
regardless of the person at the receiving end. The critical issue is that Hichilema has failed on democracy because for the last 5 years, opposition parties were not allowed to assemble. People, you never saw a protest. At least under PF, you could get people protesting, even if they ended up arrested, like Laura Meeting over the fire trucks, for example. But under the UPND, you couldn't even get a single protest approved by the police. They were always telling us that we have limited manpower or security concerns, for example. You never had opposition parties assemble, and precisely for that reason, the UPND were shocked when thousands of Zambians stand up at Monrovia rally during the campaigns because they stopped these people from actually showing which leader they were associating with. And then, of course, we saw how they destroyed the PF. From the very beginning, Hichilema's interest was not so much in sustaining democracy. It was to kill the opposition so that he could have a smooth ride in 2026. And that's how they killed the PF. We saw how many people, for example, they disqualified in relation to the running of the election. So on the bigger issues, democracy, he failed. On fighting corruption, again, there's evidence of corruption. If you look at the FIC reports, they're saying Zambia is losing $3.5 billion annually in illicit financial flows. When these things happened under Edgar, we condemned them. They happened under Hichilema, we keep quiet. We are using different standards to judge people over the same thing, and that is not right. Then you had so many people, members of Hichilema's inner circle, who were accused of engaging in corruption. The ACC looked away. Leadership is by example. The president pledged during the campaign to say, under the UPND leadership, ministers would declare their assets annually, okay? And I'll lead that effort myself. Hichilema comes to power. He reneges on those commitments. Not once has he declared his assets. It's important for leaders to declare their assets, even when the law doesn't provide for that, because you are leading by example. That way your subordinate can then say, let me follow my leader and do the same.
Doc, just a minute. A few days ago, you issued one of your strongest statements. You stated that President Hichilema will lose this election. This was prior to voting, unless he engaged in industrial, you use the word industrial rigging. The events of the last 24 hours, an attack on a leading candidate in the presidential race, an attack on polling stations and totaling centers by both UPND thugs and by the military, by the way. It's like your words are coming true. Just speak to your very strong statement where you predicted that it's unlikely for President Hichilema to win this election. And why did you say that? And then you qualified it that unless he engages in industrial scale rigging.
I said that because, as I was saying, when it comes to bigger national issues, a state of democracy, getting the best of Zambia's mineral wealth, I didn't discuss this in detail because I wanted to mention the point about first quantum minerals and the report from Global Witness that came out where it shows that you have reached a mass relationship with mining capital that has taken over $700 million from Zambia's coffers for the benefit of this Canadian multinational, according to Global Witness, that is. And then you had the same report saying the president benefited in terms of a pledge of $50 million for his campaign, and he had a lot of money during the campaign. Then you had the dismal fight on sham corruption fight. You had the division that his government entrenched in terms of ethnic division. If you look at the public service now, it's like to be appointed to public service position, you need to be from the Zambezi provinces. The Zambezi is those provinces where the Zambezi passes, the Zambezi region, provinces where the Zambezi River passes, northwestern, western, and southern provinces. There are so many Tongas in key positions now across the civil service, as if the members and the Easterners are not good enough for second-class citizens. That's something I opposed when those on the receiving end were Tongas. But now that those on the receiving end are members and Easterners, I felt that the president has failed as well on that score. Then I was mentioning the fact that the civil service is very, very politicized. For example, the cost of living has never been higher. and most Zambians live in subhuman levels of existence. Now, it was on that score, on those policy failures, that dismal record in office that explains why I say the president was going to lose. In fact, the first time I said that the president was going to lose, if you go to my Twitter page, was on 27th June this year, when I predicted that Zambia's president will lose the 2026 election unless he rigs it on an industrial scale. Or pre-ballot death happens. Now, pre-ballot death happens, pre-ballot death was misunderstood and many people think I was calling for his death. No, I was discussing a constitutional provision that says if any of the candidates who have filed to stand for election die before election day, the presidential election shall be cancelled. And because I wasn't to know who are going to be the candidates in the subsequent election, I couldn't speak that election. So it was a general statement, not specifically to Chairman, because even if Sishuwa was a candidate in the election and he dies before the election would have been postponed because you need to give a chance to the affected party to nominate somebody else. That's what the law says. Then the issue of industrial scale was very clear to say, given all those policy failures, why would voters return him to office given the fact that he's the one who has presided over those policy failures? My fears came to pass this week, Ambassador, after the 13th August vote. I'm a researcher. I speak to different people in government, in opposition, in civil society, in church. Sometimes people reach out to me in confidence of their own, and I verify what they share with me, and they do so in confidence. I can now reveal for the first time that Hichilema has managed to steal the election, and that the Electoral Commission of Zambia will be announcing him as the winner before long. HH has managed, Ambassador, to achieve this outcome using his allies in the electoral body. The ECZ, as you know, is led by 5 commissioners. After becoming president in 2021, Hichilema declined to renew the contracts of 3 of the 5 commissioners who were appointed by President Lungu and who managed his victory in 2021. I think there was Esau Chulu, who was the chairperson. There was Emily Skazwe, who was the deputy chairperson, and there was the last one whose contract wasn't renewed was Alice Mwika. All of these people could have had their contracts renewed, for example, if the president wanted, but he never renewed any of them. Instead, he replaced them with his former personal lawyer, Wangaraza Rumisi, who now chairs the Electoral Commission of Zambia, and the 2 other commissioners who have known ties to the UPND. The commissioners I'm referring to, the other 2, is Zevianji Sinkala, who joined the commission on the, I think, 14th of May 2026. I was looking at his record actually the other day. It should be 14th May 2006, which was about a week before the start of presidential nominations. And then McDonald Chipenzi, whose appointment was opposed by the opposition over his previous links to the governing party. In fact, I remember that ahead of the election that we just had, Sinkala was planning to seek election to Parliament on the UPND ticket. I think it was in Rwanda. And he had even started producing his campaign material, the T-shirts, the cars that were branded UPND regarding his name. So the president plucked him from the campaign field and felt Sinkala could better serve the ruling party in a different capacity, which is as a commissioner on the National Electoral Body. You don't do that when you are appointing people to sensitive institutions like the Electoral Commission. You don't get your personal lawyer. You don't get people who are non-members of the governing party because you are creating problems where decisions that are made by that kind of leadership can easily be questioned on the basis that they are entirely self-serving or meant to advance the interest of the governing party. But I'm saying that he managed to achieve the reverse of the results that has happened. And I will explain this in detail very briefly using the Electoral Commission, because well-placed sources in government, Ambassador, who have sought anonymity, have told me that a day after the election, which was Friday, the president was briefed by relevant officials that things were not looking good for him. The incident results, it's very easy to know that the president has lost almost like a day after the election, maybe midday or so after the election, or even in the morning, depending on the counting efficiency. It's easy to know because the result of the electoral commission are tallied at polling stations. First, before they are sent to the totaling center at district level, and finally transmitted to the electoral commission national totaling center at Mulungushi in Lusaka. So you have got 3 stages. The polling center. If you go to the polling center, you have those Gen 20 forms. Everyone signs there, the monitors, the party representatives. So if you have a party representative at that polling level, it's very easy for you to collect those things. And you know that you have won the election even before the commission announces. Of course, it's only the EC that is legally mandated to announce results by law. But organized political parties and election monitors, especially those who conduct parallel vote tabulation exercises, can easily know the national aggregate results based on the copies of results announced at the crucial polling station stage, long before they are announced by the commission in Lusaka. In 2021, for example, the UPND knew that Edgar had lost long before the Esau Chulu and his friends in the commission announced that he had lost. Indeed, this is what happened, even in this election. After the conclusion of counting at polling station level, 3 independent parallel vote tabulation exercises separately showed that each of them had lost the election to his main rival, Brian Mudube, by a difference of, let me just, I wrote that thing somewhere, by a difference of about, this is a difference of 567,911 votes. Now, these are 3 separate PVTs. I won't mention the names of people who carried them because they have the result at some point when the commission announced their result. I'm sure they will make their own findings. But the only of those 3 PVTs, the only difference with the results, and I spoke to somebody within the commission, the only difference with the results that the electoral commission had, as of yesterday, there was about 30,000 with one of the PVTs, showing that the PVTs were actually not very far away from the results that are there. So here is the president who is told, sir, things are looking very good for you. How does he respond? The president turned to his allies in the electoral commission to stop the count for the purpose of enabling him to create room for manipulating the vote in his favor. And the EC said, obliged. It was yesterday, I think, when they issued that statement around 14 hours, that was signed by the president's former personal lawyer, Zaromis, where they announced that the suspension of vote counting. They said the suspension was throughout the country, and that was based on the report of violence during the counting and announcement of results in some districts. That was the language they used. Zaromis also claimed that the violence was targeted at poll staff, and in some instances, she said had resulted in the theft of marked ballot papers in ballot boxes. Ambassador, that decision to suspend the vote count has never happened before in the history of the Electoral Commission in terms of suspending the vote count on a national scale. We started these things, as I said, the Electoral Commission, I've published things on the history of the Electoral Commission. It's one of the highly regarded institutions in the region at the Electoral Commission. Of course, it hasn't been perfect. But you see a commission that was growing in terms of its integrity and professionalism over time. From the time when the Judge Bobby Wanya was the first chairman after its creation, 1996, to the time when it was Irene Mambilima who became the next chairperson, and then Florence Mumba, and then Mambilima again before Esau Chulu succeeded Mambilima. What was very important, I think, was that at all times in the past, the commission was led by a former judge of the High Court or Supreme Court, or somebody who was serving at that level. Because the law that established the commission says the chairperson should always be a judge or a former judge of the Superior Courts, or somebody who qualifies to hold that office. Until Hichilema came to power, that position was occupied by somebody who held judicial office or who was holding one. There's a reason for that. It's because judges are seen as apolitical. We don't know who they support because the nature of their job requires them to be above partisan politics. So it makes sense. They might have their own aspirations, but we don't know them because the nature of their job prohibits open expression for any partisan causes. And it also, I think, helped that judges are on, they have this lifetime pension. I don't support these things of paying off continual office holders, like, judges. You have so many incompetent judges at the High Court level who makes terrible judgments. In addition to being punished for being serviced with poor judgments, we have to pay them for their lifetime, even after
not to cut you. Just in the last few minutes, you've said something extremely fundamental, and I just want you to repeat those facts. You've stated that President Hakainde Hichilema has lost his election according to the PVT's parallel voter tabulations, credible ones that have been done, and you have had at least sight or copies of them. You are asserting that President Hakainde Hichilema has lost this election. Then you are asserting that President Hakainde Hichilema is in the process of stealing this election and that his friends in ECZ want to declare him as winner. Just speak to those facts quickly.
That's what I said. I'm saying that the president was briefed that things weren't looking good for him, and he does what those before him in 2021 and 2011 do, which is, rather than conceding, simply say, okay, if Zambians have rejected me, keep counting. He appeals to his allies in the ECZ, and I've already discussed the compromised nature of the ECZ.
Yes.
I have there are 5 leaders there, including 2 appointed by Edgar. I think Major General Mukanda and Enjoy Mutiti. I have very high regard for those 2. I have no regard for the other 3 because, as I said, their ties to each of them are well known. But I was making an important point to say, if you look at those people we had before, they enjoyed the tax. They knew that even if I lost my job at ECZ, because I'm a judge or a former judge, I will still have a pension to fall back on for my lifetime. Mangaza Romisi can't say that because she's not a judge. So she knows that if Hichilema goes away tomorrow, loses his job tomorrow, even my job is over. In other words, there's no incentive for her to resist this pressure from political elites in State House when, for example, Hichilema wants to resist the outcome of the election. And that is an important thing when you also consider the precarious position of Zaromi's in relation to her daughter, who was charged initially with murder, but then had that charge downgraded to I think manslaughter under very strange circumstances. It was almost as if there was a deal between her and the executive, so you have to do this. That point is important because it shows the compromised nature of the leadership, and somebody like that should be able to say, for the sake of the respect of this important institution and for the peace of the country, I'm stepping aside so that somebody else can lead it. If I were in her position and the facts that applied to her apply to me, I would have walked away. I don't have to remain in the position. If at all it's for the good of the country, for the good of the country, I should walk away. But the president reaches out to his allies in the commission, and they do a very strange thing, which is suspending the count, something that has never happened in the history of the commission on a national scale. And I was saying that decision is problematic for 5 reasons, maybe more, but at least 5 come to mind very quickly. The first is that the suspension of the vote count was based on insufficient evidence. There were no reports of violence in any part of the country during the voting. In fact, if you listen to both election observers in their preliminary statements, and to what Hichilema himself said, this is a man who doesn't hesitate to heap praises on himself when it doesn't come from other people. Both the election observers and the president confirmed that voting had taken place peacefully. So where did the Electoral Commission find evidence of deliberate, widespread, systematic violence to justify their decision to stop the count? That's one problem. The second one is that the decision was made without the support of the law. I think it was yesterday when the Law Association of Zambia issued their statement to the effect that there is currently no law that empowers the Commission to suspend vote counting across the country. The existing legislation, Ambassador, only allows the Commission to suspend vote counting at each polling station level. But even then, there has to be sufficient grounds for that. There's no law that empowers the Commission to say if something happens in one area, you should suspend whatever everywhere else. Because if you remember in 2021, Kungo, I think it was Jackson Kungo, was killed in Northwestern Province. the Election Commission of Zambia never suspended the vote counting throughout the country. The third problem was that the decision was illogical, because if only some districts, going by what the Commission said in that statement, if only some districts were affected, why did the Electoral Commission extend the suspension of vote counting to the whole country, including areas that were not affected? Why should they be blamed for what some district elsewhere is not has done, for example? So you can see how illogical the decision was. The fourth problem was that the decision was vague in relation to the identity of the affected districts. If you read that statement, it was carefully worded, which shows the mischief that it came with. It simply said some district. It never mentioned whether we were left to speculate whether this district is Dudumwezi, whether it's Senanga, whether it's Kaputa. We don't. Voters were never. Zambians were never told. It was left to guesswork. We were just told there was violence in some district. Now, how is it possible, Ambassador, that the Electoral Commission of Zambia knew that violence had occurred in some districts, but could not state the names of the affected areas in the same constituency? Is it because the Commission was afraid that the people from those areas whom they were saying had experienced violence would have disputed the report and said, no, not here. The voting actually proceeded peacefully until the close of voting. That's the fourth problem. The fifth one is that the decision fatally wounds the credibility of the election result itself. Because if ballot boxes were stolen, as they told us, as they alleged in that statement, then why should the public believe that the results being announced are accurate and not those that could have been swapped with those that were stolen? How many boxes were stolen? We were never told. If it's 1,000 of boxes, then it might explain why, over the last 24 hours, for example, we have seen military officials taking over polling stations in various parts of the country. I was talking to a chief in Luapula before I came to the program. He says, there's military officials here going polling station, doing strange thing, rigging. That's Luapula, Northern Province. And for me, that is important because all those limitations that I've just noted in the statement that is issued when announcing the suspension of vote count, it showed that they were not deliberate. They were deliberate. What was important for each level was not the reputation of the Electoral Commission of Zambia and its integrity, but the creation of sufficient time in which it could manipulate the results. And that is precisely what happened during the 4-hour period when the suspension was in effect. Because if you remember, the Commission announced, I think, around 17 or 18 yesterday, that they had now resumed vote counting because the violence in some areas had been contained. Again, even when they did so, they never told us where that violence was. It was just in their heads, or it was for them to guess to us that. Left to us to guess where that statement was. If the violence was in a given area, the Commission had the obligation transparently to say the violence was in this area and it was of this scale and this is what happened. They didn't do that. Why? Because the suspension itself of the vote counting was not intended to cure the problem that they claimed there was. And the HH deployed the military officials afterwards, as I said, to invade polling stations. We saw reports from journalists how polling agents were being chased from polling stations, leaving only security officials. Why are you doing that if not to swap the results? So the suspension was a deliberate strategy designed to infuse in the ballots that he needed to reverse the outcome and win. Because by changing the result at polling station level, as I mentioned earlier, this is a central stage. Ichilema wanted to create a record at the state at that stage that matters most since the last two stages are their recipients. That's the district tutoring center and the national tutoring center in Mongoshi. By midday today, that exercise had been successfully completed. What remains is for the electoral commission of Zambia to now find efficiency in announcing the altered results and finally declaring the man as the president-elect of Zambia. Now, until
again, that is very, that's very difficult fact to swallow. So results have been altered. We understand, of course, how the results were altered. What should Zambians do? Because it becomes helpless. If ECZ is hijacked, you have the military taking part in open rigging of this vote that the people of Zambia did. Results are being changed. They are replacing the Gen 20. What should happen? We should not just be in resignation and accept these altered results, accept the rigging, that a man that has lost election now be presented as winner to us. It's just very difficult in my mind to process all these facts. Just give us some thoughts about it.
Well, I don't have the authority to tell Zambians what they should do. What I can do is to share with Zambians the knowledge that I come in contact with by virtue of my interaction with various different people, including many who just come to me in confidence and say, listen, we have seen, we misunderstood you when you spoke very strongly against Edgar Lungu, that, you just hated Edgar Lungu. But we have seen now that you actually just love Zambia more. And some come and share this information with me, for example. For me, Ambassador, this doesn't surprise me because I've been consistent in this issue, saying,
correct.
If you got my write-ups, the past write I warned as early as 2023, I think it was June, that HM had devised a 5-point strategy to stay in power at all costs. And I discussed that strategy. That article is still online. It was titled, I think, HM's strategy to stay in power at all costs. I discussed 5 strategies containing the Catholic Church, packing the institutions that matter most, that is the courts and the electoral commission of Zambia with his supporters and loyalists, and he has done that. He's the president who has appointed most judges to the High Court under the same method that he opposed when done by his predecessor. And as I said, he has backed the electoral commission with questionable characters. And then the third one was covering corruption. He's not opposed to corruption. He's opposed to corruption under his administration being exposed. And then the fourth one was co-opting as influential civil society elites. There's so many whom we have lost to the government. At first, I was happy because, you see, it's good to have the best of us say with the government. But the scale on which it was done, you could clearly see that it was meant to really weaken the civil society because it takes years to raise leaders of that magnitude. I'm happy that we still have people like Linda Kasonde, people like Bebna Changala, and a few others, but the majority of the people who were so central to holding Lungu to account in civil society and academia are very quiet now, and many of them are eating with the government. And many of them also came from the Zambezi region where I come from. So if you look at most Lords and Tongas, it's like Ichirima can do no wrong. The very thing that they opposed when done by Edgar and his friends in the PF, now they keep quiet or look away when Ichirima does the very wrongs. Again, showing how we are less patriotic. We are people that is prepared to defend our own when they do wrong things, provided those on the receiving end of state injustices are people who come from other groups, for example. And I don't like that because that's not who we are. And then you had the final thing was to destroy the opposition. Again, he did this in terms of the PF, for example, as we saw, using MPs like Chavinga, which it was Mao Sampa, and then Chavinga and a couple of others. I warned this in 2023. His defenders, the Tongas in academia, came there and said, Sishuwa is talking nonsense. Time has a way of proving some of these things, especially when you're not defending, interest of a particular politician, particular tribe, or particular narrow interest. When you are just meant to defend public interest. It has proved that many of those fears that I raised as far back as 2023 were not unfounded. So for me, even when I say it was losing in June this year, it wasn't because I hate the president. This is the person I voted for. The highest form of expression of love from a citizen to other politician is giving them their most precious gift, which is the vote, and I gave it. So when I speak out against what he's doing wrong, it's not because I hate the man. It's actually because I tried as early as 2023, as I said even earlier, to point out pitfalls in the hope that he could change for the good of all of us. Because if you are going to Nakonde ambassador, you're starting off from intercity, and you notice that the bus is going to Adishimabala, you shouldn't wait until you are in Mazaboka or Monze to tell the driver that, sir, you are taking us in the wrong direction. Because the bus fare we paid you, which is the vote, was meant to take us to Nakonde, and Nakonde is in the opposite direction. We should raise that before it's too late, so that the driver can turn and take us to Nakonde. We were being told over the last 5 years, Ambassador, that the driver knew what he was doing, but we should keep quiet. But the driver has crash landed us, and now people wanted to leave him. He's playing with the results of it. That's very dangerous because until now, Ambassador, Zambia possessed one of Southern Africa's most important traditions of peaceful democratic competition and transfer of political power. That record has depended upon the conduct, not only of political leaders, but also electoral officials, security institutions, civil society, party representatives, independent media, citizens, and international partners. Previous Zambian electoral transition, Ambassador, demonstrated that timely attention by key actors to some of these issues can reinforce the professional independence of institutions and reduce incentives for conduct that could compromise public confidence in an election. So you have to understand what's happening in Zambia. Again, it's a wider pattern of democratic erosion across the SADC region. Because Zambia carries an unusual significance in that sense. Recent developments in several neighboring states, Mozambique, Angola, and the constitutional changes, terrible constitutional changes that happened in Zimbabwe, have demonstrated how quickly electoral competition, constitutional restraints, and even institutional independence can erode, Ambassador, when regional safeguards are absent and the attention of traditional international partners, particularly the US and the EU, is diverted by competing priorities. Unfortunately, I'm sad to say this, Zambia's previously enviable democratic tradition that distinguished the country within Southern Africa is now gone. Not that Hichilema would give a damn. What mattered to him was that he remained in power, even if it means governing over the next 5 years, or however long that he will do once he has won and changed the constitution, like Mnangagwa has done to stop presidential election taking place, so that Parliament can choose leaders. If it means governing without any shred of legitimacy for the next 5 years, he will do it. Because in the end, Ndubile won the most votes, but Hichilema won the result. And for me, it's sad because, again, coming back to your point about the role of the military, what we saw yesterday shouldn't have happened. You see soldiers.
In fact, Doc, this as we begin to wind up our time with you, we ambushed you at a short notice, and I'm eternally grateful that you responded. I wanted you to pay at least some words. I don't know if you familiarize yourself with a military raid on Brian Mundubile's residence, where he and his family were then taken in a very crude and brutal manner, where shots were fired both at him, his wife, and especially the two colleagues he had run with in the bedroom, Mutoto Kafwaya and George Sanga. And they were retrieved like criminals. And they were, taken, as you have heard from the narration from Brian Mundubile. His key colleagues are still unaccounted for. Honorable Mutoto Kafwaya, who we understand was shot twice, and he was bleeding profusely. And we don't know where George Sanga is. We don't know where Bishop Trevor Mwamba is. We've just located this late where Patrick Mwansa is, the husband to Tasila, is at Central Police. These events orchestrated by the police, by the army, not by the police, in military uniform, military Zambia army vehicles. I don't know what your view is about these events before I let you go.
Well, there are a couple of points there. The first is that they speak to the the partisan character of the leadership of the military. You see, Ali Huzwi, he gave a statement where I think it was at this farewell party, which was hosted for him by the military. Again, that story is available in Newsdigger. He issued a statement to telling his successor to say, please preserve the non-partisan character of the Zambia army. I was misunderstood sometimes over this matter, but I'm very happy to live with that character intact. It was almost a confession to say, I've been fired because I refused to assure the president that the army will play a partisan role in the next election. That statement, in my view, was important to understanding what's happening now, because his successor, that is Ali Huzwi's successor, Zele, is not a man who, as I've demonstrated earlier, is averse to using the military for partisan goals. What happened at Munduwile's residence could not have happened without the army commanders issuing the orders for them to do that. Because what happened wasn't carried out by the police. It was carried out by officers from the office of the president, as well as commandos. And these were professionals. When they got there, they got to his residence. He was coming from meeting observers at some point, and then they got to his residence. They swept off everyone that they found in that place when they took him. First, of course, they did those. They mistreated people the way they Mondovile described, I think, in that video that he issued. But I spoke to one or two officers in confidence who also disclosed what happened. Some of them, you see, are just acting under orders, because if you are given an order, you have to carry it, whether you like it or not. Otherwise, it will be regarded as indiscipline. So they went there, tortured those people, and interrogated Mondovile, including over those two videos I think he had sent to me there. And at some point, then they took them. They took them to force to headquarters, but they found that the offices there were closed. So one of them says, we asked him, where should we take you? And he said, take me to Ibex Hill Police. That's why there was a statement. Joseph, what's the name of this person? Newsdigger published a flash point on their Facebook page, say, Undugre is being taken to Ibex Hill Police. Yes. Joseph wasn't wrong, because that's what happened. I don't know. It means somebody else inside the system was feeding him that information. He's not one who just posting things from without. But the police were quite uncomfortable, because this wasn't a police operation. The police were sidestepped. The police were quite uncomfortable to say, you can't bring him here because it's not an operation. So in the end, they couldn't go to Ibex Hill. They took him somewhere else in the bush, where they dumped him. And after grabbing all the electronic devices that they could find, then you had this person who Peter Dilexi, the office of parliament can look like it's a political office. Tavokawa going to, I think, Ibex Police to perform that staged thing where he arrived there, somebody filming him. That was all performance. The critical point for me is that exercise that took place in Munduwile's house couldn't have been done without the director of the army commander. The army commander couldn't have done what he did without the instruction of the president. So we shouldn't condemn the military here. We should understand where that comes. Why is Ichirema doing this? It's almost like it's creating a distraction. At this other exercise of dealing of these other military figures going to polling stations to deal with the violence that's happening, we need to keep these guys busy. And then you have the abduction of people like the Anglican Bishop Mwamba. I knew Bishop Mwamba from the time when I was still at school studying in Oxford, in the United Kingdom. We became friends then. So I've known him for a long time. He's a very, very decent man, one of the best, most vulnerable citizens we have. George Sanga, I don't know him personally, but what I know is that he's a man of integrity. In fact, when the reports previously went out that Sanga had been kidnapped or abducted, because of his principled character, he came out and said it wasn't true. Now he's missing. He's not a man who can feign abduction. that the man who has shown very recently that his integrity is beyond question. And so he has been abducted by the same people who have been abducting other people. Bowden Findlay is still missing. I know from inside that Bowden is being kept in a container in Mwembeshi, because as you know, Mwembeshi, the male prison is not yet fully operational. So they're keeping him in a container, and then you had these several other people who were abducted over the couple of previous days. Again, you don't need to do the thing. Well, that's not Zambia. We know if people have done the wrong thing, issue, call out, let them come, and then you ask them, you tell them, listen, we are reading you have your rights here, but here's the wrong thing you have done. We are arresting you, and then you issue them bond. You take them to court within a period prescribed by law. That's how normal and civilized societies function. But what are we seeing now? This abduction of people. We don't know whether Kafwa is still alive. When I spoke to people, the report I got was that Kafwa was shot at. And that because of the shooting, it was he was taken to Mainasoko and heavily sedated after an operation, but he wasn't entered into the system because they wanted to cover their tracks. And even when Kawana went there to make another show, to stage another show, for example. All that was just for public, because the UPND, you have to give them credit. They have been very good in terms of managing the public narrative to show that there's confusion. Of course, there's lack of information from the Mundubire camp also, but you can't blame them entirely. So because this is a new part that was from just two months ago, they don't yet have the infrastructure that could have been established. If they had been given to operate, time to operate, for example, if there were no those kind of restrictions. So one has to understand what's happening here in context to say, all this is happening because you are dealing with a president who lacks restraint. He's prepared to do anything, to go to any length to make sure that he retains power. In fact, if anything, I think Mundubire has shown remarkable courage. The last couple of weeks, I think there's so many obstacles that were placed in his path. From the time that they arrested him, I think in March, and grabbed his passport, which meant he couldn't leave the country, to the time that he had to run on a smaller ticket because, the FDD on which he had planned to run, the state did what he did best, which is in Ngalato. And then to the time when after he was he and McCabe became candidates. If you remember, they took time to confirm their candidature because there were maneuvers to try to disqualify them. Even after he became a candidate, for example, and he started having these rallies, they stopped him and said, no, you can't. We have to give you a timetable to get out the other people. But they treated the president differently. HH is not standing in this election because he's a president. No, he's a candidate. So you can't have rules for the opposition and rules for somebody else by virtue of the office. And because we are talking about a compromised electoral commission of Zambia, you have a scenario where the president's schedule where the schedule which the ECZ drew didn't apply to one candidate, for example. You are putting somebody above the law. That's wrong. It shouldn't happen. And then they gave him the timetable that says you'll be in these areas and you end up in the Zambezi province. You could see how the attempt there was to make sure that they undermine the momentum that he would have built by throwing him to the places where they felt if he ended here, there would be no one turning at his rallies. But when we saw what happened in Solwezi, when he went there, thousands of people turned up, and that really worried them because they said, look, this guy has entered in our bedroom. You are that Nigerian spiritual advisor of HH who issued very damning statements saying Mundubire should be armed. You never heard Ichirema coming out and saying, no, I want to retain office, I want to win, but not that win at the expense of anyone's life, where you are saying they should be stoned, for example. He never had condemned those things. Mundubire was also attacked in Kitwe. If you remember, the attackers actually even left the bus behind as if to tempt them to ban the bus so that they could be arrested the same way they have arrested Chitodra and other people, I think, Then you had those attacks in Western Province in Rwampa, UPND cadres in uniform attacked with people in view of the police. Again, we saw that in Kalabo. We saw it in Mongo where the rally was peaceful, the police come and discharged tear gas. He never responded. That considerable restraint, I think, for me is an admirable quality because it could have very easily ended up differently if he had not restrained himself and his supporters amidst these continued provoked attacks from the state. Then you have the fact that he couldn't get campaign finance. You know, as I say, they got his passports and he couldn't leave the country. When he tried to mobilize resources, the businessmen who helped him were targeted for intimidation, while common crowdfunding methods such as GoFundMe, which he employed, they mocked him, saying, "Oh, look at this man, he's a red planner." When evidence emerged that Zambians were prepared to abandon their poverty briefly and contribute to the political campaign of this man, then they turned around and started frustrating his mobilization efforts as well. Then you can think about the media. You see, he's not there in the public media. This is the media that Zambians are paying for. They should cover everyone and let people make their decisions based on informed choices. Hichilema suffered, so when he was in opposition. So I hoped that when he becomes president, he's going not to do the wrong thing that he condemned when done by his predecessors. But you don't see opposition voices on that NBC today, except unless they are being portrayed in a negative way, for example. And what makes it even worse is that in the case of Hichilema, they have even crowded the opposition voices out of the private media, whether it's Diamond TV, whether it's Radio Phoenix, for example. The only media that cover the opposition is actually Hot FM and KBN television. But even those are being targeted using lapdogs, such as the IBA and the Ministry of Information, for intimidation every day. Again, that's an obstacle that you can see that the man had to overcome to reach the level where he has reached. So many other obstacles that he has overcome. And then you have this military count, the commandos being deployed. But let the counting of votes continue in a transparent manner. If you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't be doing all these things, because while doing it, if you have done anything wrong, summon him to the police in the full view of everybody. Hichilema complained when the Galungu sent policemen to his house at night. Why is he doing the same thing that he condemned when he was done by his predecessor? That's why I talk about the hypocrisy of this man, because we shouldn't be here talking about the very wrong that the man had condemned when done by his friend. In the end, even if he comes out of this election, and even if the incident comes out and says, the president is elected Hichilema, there are very few Zambians outside UPN supporters who believe that his victory is genuine. The evidence is there, You have never before seen the military manning polling stations or going to polling stations. We have never seen military vehicles on our streets in the compound in Osaka, for example. I saw military, vehicles on the streets. It has never happened before. We don't see soldiers engaging in this kind of pattern exercises. I know that the rank and file in the army are very, very professional men and women for whom I hold the highest regard. I have nothing against those. My quarrel is with the leadership, particularly General Ziele. If there is in future, I hope he lives long. When there will be proper change of government, people like Ziele must be held to account, made to account for some of these decisions, because it doesn't matter whether you are advancing Sishuwa's interest. If you are doing the wrong thing to advance my interest, I should tell you to say, "Sir, I don't want you to break the law. I don't want you to kill any Zambian, to torture any Zambian in my name, or so that I can benefit." No, if Zambians don't want me as their leader, I should respect that will that they have given expression and give a chance to whoever they have chosen. Whatever I think of Ndebele, it doesn't matter whether I support Ndebele or not. What matters if the Zambians think that that's the best person that should lead them, give them a chance. There are many Zambians who believe that it was the wrong person, to lead them. People voted for him. I was one of those. I would have voted for Ndebele if I had the chance to vote. No, I wouldn't. I have my reservations about Brian. But there are so many people who saw in him a leader that they thought should lead them. We need to respect each other's choices in a democracy, because the leader that I support doesn't have to be the leader that you support. In the end, it is the choices of the majority that should determine who leads them. But that decision of who leads them should never be made by the president's allies in the Electoral Commission of Zambia, should never be made by security services, should never be made by the courts, because I can see what they're trying to do here. Announce whatever result that you can, then let them go to court. because they know that they've packed the judiciary with their friends. And I wouldn't even myself, if you send me to appear before some of the judges that HM has appointed, or those who handle PF cases, for example, and you say, "Sure, go and appear before judge so and so," I'll tell that judge without trial that I don't want you to waste your time by pretending that you can listen to my trial. What I'm going to say, just send me to prison directly, because I have no faith in the kind of judiciary that we have now. It should never be like that, Ambassador. We are destroying the country. One day, this president will be gone. That political party, UPND, will be gone. Their supporters, the praise singers, who support everything that this person does, they will be gone too. What will remain is the damage that is being done to our country today. That will take years to repair. We should always remember that our presence on earth is very limited. You may hear tomorrow that Sishuwa has been killed, whether it's by UPND thugs that sent to kill him or to abduct him. It's okay. We all die one day, and I will go too. What we should never do is to drag the country down with us, just for a narrow selfish interest. No. When we have a chance to save the country, like where Ichirema was given that opportunity with his friends, save the people to the best of your ability. And when the people decide that they no longer want you, they want to give a chance to somebody else, let their will be respected. No, people don't have to die so that Ichirema and his friends can remain in power. I oppose the bad things of Edgar Lungu and Michael Sata before him. I oppose the bad things of Ichirema, and I appeal to the president to say, please, can you respect the will of the Zambian people? If what I've been told by various officials that you've lost this election is true, and you know the truth, leave. If you are worried about what will happen to you, Mr. President, after the election, that maybe you'll be arrested, then find the former president. Masisi is still in Zambia. The one who was leading the AU, has been unwell and has been one of the hospitals in Lusaka throughout this period. But Masisi is there. Talk to him the same way that Bai Koroma, Kikwete, and others spoke with Edgar. Talk to him, show your concerns, and say, listen, I don't want to be arrested when I leave office. Can I have some freedom? And then you don't have to impose yourself on the people that don't want you. You don't have to swap, these constituency results so that you can flip and get and overturn the 54% that we won the election with, for example. It's very important that all of us, Mr. President, including you and me and everybody else who's listening and not listening to this program, we always put the interest of the country over and above our personal interest. That is my appeal, Ambassador. And I want to thank you most sincerely for the opportunity to share, my views. Because every time I appear on some of these programs in Zambia, that station, that thing, whether it's radio or TV, is shut out. My voice has been taken out of the newspapers in Zambia by the state house officials. I know, I've been told all these things. They went to the Mail and Guardian, a newspaper that I wrote for many years. They asked the editors, can you shut out Sishuwa's voice? Two of the previous editors rejected them, but they showed me the messages. And I know the people from State House who wrote to Mail and Guardian. When those editors left, we had a new set of editors who are known, who are friends at State House. They renewed their request before the editors. Now I can't even appear in the Mail and Guardian. That's why I published my thoughts on Twitter for free, and as I've done because my voice is being shut out on other platforms. I am not the problem. The problem is the high cost of living, the lack of democracy, the corruption, the many wrong things that are reducing Zambian subhuman levels of existence. Let's fight those problems, Mr. President. It's not right to steal the will of the people the way you're trying to do with your friends in the Republic of Zambia. Stop it.
Powerful. Before I let you go, I was just reading on the two comments. We'll be opening the phone lines just now. But there are two questions for you. One is quoting you where you have stated that Munduvile won the votes. Hichilema won the results announced. And I want you to explain that. The second one is that is your book available? Are your books available in Book World, or where are they available in Lusaka? Probably just answer those two lines and then I let you go, especially that you just came at short notice.
for the first question, if I heard correctly, was asking me to explain that Munduvile won the most votes, but Ichilema won the result. So what I meant there is that based on the PVT that were done by institutions for which I have high regard, based on the results that the Electoral Commission of Zambia had at polling station level, that was before the ballot boxes were stolen, according to the ECZ. Munduvile had got the majority votes. I think the PVT, independent from each other, actually were consistent in showing that he got 54%. Based on that, it is fair to say that Munduvile won the votes. What was remaining was for the ECZ to verify those results very transparently, working with everyone, all the political party representatives. Because as I said, you have that three-stage process at polling station level. Results, all Gen 20 forms are signed by everybody. If you get pictures of that and send them to your party, if you are an organized party, you can easily have those results in a limited time frame before the ECZ actually announces it. Because the ECZ has to verify with party representatives to make sure that the results that they announce are accurate. You remember Garing Combo in 2021, how he made a show of the fact that we really needed to make sure that we verify these results, because they had those results already before ECZ announced. So the Munduvile team had those results, the PVT team had those results, and Hichilema knows, the Electoral Commission knows, and Hichilema knows the results that were obtained as of yesterday before the suspension of the vote. And on that account, I heard Munduvile himself saying that they had won the election. He didn't declare himself president, but that I think is the job of the Electoral Commission of Zambia. If he had declared himself president-elect, that would be an offense under the law, and I would have supported his arrest. But he didn't do that. He was basically saying, based on the results that we have ourselves, we have won this election. I have never spoken to Munduvile, for I don't know how many years, but I've been able to, independently from him and his party, I don't know anyone in that party, to verify this kind of things and say, okay, independently from each other, here is the picture that this guy has actually won the election. Then you have the Electoral Commission and Ichilema and his friend in the Electoral Commission doing the Mingalato, where they start saying the ballots have been stolen, some districts had violence, which nobody else knows. The military people are going now, military police, the military are going to polling stations, chasing away people, and only leaving security officials. And it is at that point that the results are being changed. At the end of this exercise, what will happen is Ichilema is going to be declared president-elect. They will give him the victory outright, over 50%, for example. But that won't be the true will of the people. And I was saying they know these things, you see. And that is what I meant when I said this other one wins the votes. But what determines the most, whatever, is actually the one who announces the results. If you look at the Parliament, for example, if I give you an example, when there was that vote on the Constitutional Amendment Bill, the results that Neri Muti announced in Parliament may not actually be the results of how MPs voted on the bill, because when Muti announced the results, she said there was 133 MPs who voted for the bill, and then there was 2 MPs who voted no for the bill. That's what was published, for example. Of course, to date, you have never been shown the voting record, for example. But what was striking about that was that when Hichilema started harassing Garing Combo and his friends, he told the Zambians that Garing Combo, I think there was Muchima, Samakai, and some guy from Northern Province, I remember, it was maybe Elijah, something Moranga. He said those MPs had opposed the bill, voted against the bill, 4 MPs that he mentioned How was it possible when Speaker Neri Muti told us that there were only two MPs? You can see how lies have short legs. Because if it's true that there were only two MPs, we should only have two MPs, for example, who voted against that bill, reflected consistent in terms of the results. So what we learned from that experience was that what matters is not how you vote. It is what results are announced by the person who is empowered to make the announcement. And we can clearly see in this case that this is what they're trying to do with regards to the election that we just had. That what will matter is not actually how the voters voted. What would matter is the results that Mwangaza Rumisi and her friends at the Electoral Commission are going to announce. We don't want that, because if they were very transparent, there was no need to suspend the vote count. If they were very transparent, there was no need to involve the military in this whole thing. So even when they are doing wrong things, you see, I don't know what they take Zambians for. It's very clear to see. Zambians are able to see what's going on. You don't want to do that, because what kind of a presidency, this one, that is each of them is going to lead over the next 5 years, and under a victory that is obtained that way. So that's what I meant when I said that one has won the most votes, the other one has won the results, more like that will be given to him. Of course, I can be proved wrong. Less time pass, but what I've shared with here is based on the information shared with me in the course of my interaction with various people, and I'm speaking here as a citizen of Zambia. It's very important for people to understand that when I do these things, I don't speak as an academic. I speak as a citizen of Zambia, and the Constitution imposes particular obligations on all of us to defend it and to make sure that we perform particular duties that advance our collective interests. Those responsibilities, those duties don't cease when somebody's out, just because somebody's out of the country. As you are ambassador, you are expressing the requirements that are demanded from all of us as citizens of the country. We should love Zambia more than we love our tribes. We should love Zambia more than we love our narrow personal interest or group interest, for example. And for me, even if Kundabira won this election, I was still going to hold him to account over the many things that ran me in conflict with a different president, for example, if he was going to do that. One of my concerns, actually, when they were campaigning, I looked at his team. I saw many members and Easterners there. I couldn't see diversity. And I was worried to say, if this guy becomes president tomorrow, is he going to do the kind of politics that I disliked when it was done by Benedict Lungu and their friends in PF, for example? I was going to fight him over that, for example, if he was going to mistreat other groups outside the member and the Eastern groups, for example. And I knew, I think he posted a Twitter thing, it should be 2-3 days ago, where he quoted something and said in 2021 that in a free and fair election, Edgar Lungu could not win the election. In an unfair contest, he may not lose. And he quoted and said, when you say this, European supporters supported you. But now when you are saying the same thing about this president, they are insulting you. I responded to him. I said, look, I have a fairly predictable way of engaging political leaders. My focus is on the actions of the people in power at a given moment. When those leaders leave, my attention shifts to the next set of leaders in terms of holding them to account. Why should I follow you when you are in opposition? Unless you are an opposition leader, a main opposition leader, which explains why sometimes I criticize HH when he was in opposition, because he was the main opposition leader. I did the same with Nevers Mumba, because again, he was a main opposition leader. Why should I criticize a leader who has no MP, was no councillor, who is not next in line in terms of potential of them being elected? So I had a very clear outline, and I told him on Twitter, there's a record that effect. I know that's just a matter of time, because tomorrow if you became president, and I do to your president what I'm doing to Ichirema, those who are supporting me today will be the first one to insult me tomorrow. It's okay, I will defend any Zambian's right to criticize what I put out in course of my public works, for example. If the best that a person can do is to insult me or to call me a fool or an idiot or stupid, I'll defend the right to do so. I don't become a stupid or idiotic person just because somebody else said I am. Ambassador Mwamba, if I came and told you today that you have so much money in your account, You shouldn't have to abandon what you are doing to run to the bank and say, please print a bank statement for the last 3 years. I want to prove to you that I don't have the money. You know you don't have the money. Why the hell should you go to the bank and lose time and money to actually prove to me what you already know? That's why I'm saying what matters to us, not what people say about us. It's what we know about ourselves. It's how we respond to what has been said. It is the way that we attach to the sentiment that other people have given expression to. And I know for me that as long as the presidents do wrong things and I point them out, there are supporters who accuse me what European supporters are accusing me now. Oh, he's bitter, or he wasn't given a job. The nature of my education training ambassador that I can get a job anywhere. Even if I wanted to work for the government, for me, that would be an act of sacrifice. The government can't even afford me. I'm not short of opportunities. But I don't want political jobs. I don't want government jobs because I won't have the freedom to express myself the way I'm doing now on this platform with you. If a new president comes tomorrow, I know that what the supporters are saying about me, European supporters are saying about me, because I'm criticizing the leader they support, those new supporters will be the same. Even MMD, it was the same. I started doing this thing in 2009. There are many ministers who said that they are still alive, who told me that I was supporting the PF, but just because I was criticizing the PF and the MMD. One of them is very old now, but he's alive. He can speak to this. When Michael Sata came, there's a record in the Post. I held to account Michael Sata. I even complained one time to say, no, advise me properly. Otherwise, Sishuwa is going to ask in the Post who advises. I had a weekly column in the Post. And it's not that I'm not offered opportunities. No. Sata offered me an opportunity. There are people who are still alive, ministers and other senior government officials who can testify to that effect. Edgar Lungu did the same. Even this president has offered me job opportunities. I don't want a job in government. I'm happy contributing as an academic where I am. And Zambians should learn to take people, respect people in their various stations. We all don't have to do the same thing, provided our leaders listen to our concerns when we speak. If you can imagine what would have happened if Nevas Mumba had continued serving as an evangelist. He would be highly respected rather than it's a sore side to listen to see him. Every time he speaks now, you have to reduce the volume if at all there's a television set or a radio station, because you never know what the man can say in praise of the president, for example. And he does this across the successive president. That's not how an adult should live. Then you have you're trying to get a story and say, oh, come into government and you see you want a job. I don't want those things. I'm happy being an academic, which brings the last question about the book, whether it's available. No, it's not available. How publications work. It's not available in Zambia, rather it's not available. How academic publications work is that once you write a journal article or a book, it is sent to reviewers, peer reviewers, in your field. They assess it. Sometimes very brutal. They tell you what is weak, and they send back to you for correction until it is acceptable. You publish it at no cost to you. The publisher, however, assumes the cost. So, for example, the history of Zambia, the book that I wrote, which is Party Politics and Populism in Zambia, it was published by a UK publisher. And I didn't pay anything because if you pay anything, then it's not an academic book. It's a self-publishing, like a memoir. You see, the people who publish memoirs, they pay for those things so that people can publish them. You can write anything to be published because you're paying for it. When you are doing academic publications, you don't pay for this. They are published on their merit after evaluation by professors and other people whom you don't even know who are operating in your respective disciplines. So I did that with the book, and then it was published by UK publisher James Curry in 2024. What I had hoped and what was agreed was that if I find an African publisher that can publish the book here, they should buy that right and subsidize the rest so that it can be made available to the African market. That was what the contract said. Unfortunately, when we tried to find a publisher to buy the rights, the UK publisher was very, very expensive in terms of the demands for how much they were asking, South African publishers or any other publisher to sell the African market in terms of the rate they were demanding. And for me, that was very sad, because one of the things that I enjoy about my work is I like it when my work is read by the very people that matter most to me, and that is Zambians. I don't do these things what it can be hidden in paywall and journals. Or I don't even get money, you see. That book, even if you sell 100 copies out of it, the money that comes to the author is as little as, maybe if you sell 100 or 200 copies, it can be as little as £2, for example, because whatever the payment for them is very small. It's very, very negligible. It's maybe minus 0 point something %. So we can clearly see that academic work is itself very, very self-sacrificing. For example, we don't do it to make money, because the money doesn't come to you, it goes to the publisher, just like it does with the journal articles. So I was very unhappy when that book was, when we couldn't find a publisher that could have made the book available in places like Zambia, because I wanted the book to be read by Zambians, because it talks about the history of this place, of Zambia, in a very, very accessible way, where Zambians can read, and we know that Zambians are generally, under 35 years or below. It means that many of the people that are alive now that are making critical decisions about the future of the country don't even know the history of the place. I have the privilege of knowing this history because I studied it. When I share some of these opinions and I see people insulting me, I just tolerate them, because everybody else can share an opinion, but not everyone can share an informed opinion. So I use that historical knowledge and awareness to bring to public attention some of the pitfalls that we can avoid, because they've been made by other people before. But I also use this kind of historical knowledge to identify issues that I think we can build around a shared sense of nationhood and identity. To say, if you look at American ambassador where you are, when you talk about Americans, say, what makes you an American? There are certain values that they have identified and codified as what defines them. One of them is freedom. The other is democracy and opportunity, for example, and liberty. But those things were not always there. They were products of particular presidents who embodied them. Abraham Lincoln, for example, is the one who ended slave trade following the 1861 to 1863 American Civil War, because he said, we can't have half of the country living in servitude while other half is free. That's how the southern states and northern states, for example, go to war, out of which freedom is secured for everyone in the U.S. So you have liberty, you have freedom there becoming an important American value. Then you had the president who said, we need a government for the people and by the people in Woodrow Wilson after the Second World War in 1945. That's how democracy is born. You have another one who says opportunity matters, for example. Again, that's how these values become codified. And I'm saying, what about us as Zambian? When I look at our history, I ask myself, what makes us Zambian outside the accident of our birthplace or that passport that we carry? In fact, when you're in Zambia, ambassador, you're not a Zambian. You are a Bemba, you are a Lozi, you are a Tonga, you are a Chewa, Ruvale, Kaonde, or whatever. What I'm calling for through that historical awareness is for us to identify values that we can that can define us, regardless of these narrow identities that we have for us. But we can do that by looking also at our leaders. What can we learn from a leader, Kaunda's leadership, for example? It's unity in diversity. Kaunda was very sensitive to this idea of ethnic balance because he understood that it's important to create a Zambia where everybody feels equal, where if you came from Luapula, you didn't feel out of place if you found yourself in Western Province. If you were Tonga, you didn't feel out of place if you found yourself in Muchinga, for example. Those things won't happen on their own. They require leadership, and Kaunda showed us the way. Can we build on that? So you identify unity as an important national value. You move to Chiruba. Yes, Chiruba did many wrong things, including corruption. But he was very central to this idea of democracy because we terminated the Kaunda's one-party rule in 1991 and embraced this idea of democracy. We don't want one-man rule that the HH is trying to take Zambia back to. So you can say for all his failures, let's take democracy as an important value that defines who we are. So we want a Zambia where people freely express themselves on social media. They shouldn't be saying, I'm a lawyer. And then you move to Manawasa. What is it that we can say about our as president? Is that one value that sums up on us as presidents, for example? It could be anti-corruption, for example. When Asa took to court a very man who had made him president, there were other aspects, of course, that he grew to embrace. He didn't start that way, like tolerance for, and respect for diversity of views. When Asa wanted to deport Roy Clark, I think in 2004, but over time, he grew to become very, very tolerant. Michael Sata made life very, very difficult for Levy. But Levy, when he learned that Sata had a heart attack, he provided for his transportation to South Africa, for his evacuation, for example, and he came and told us when they were reconciling. I remember that because for me, I pay attention. I studied presidential leadership. I pay attention to what leaders say. Levy said, when I heard that before what happened to him happened, I hated this man. I thought he was making my job to govern this country extremely difficult. He was being malicious. I remember people were there. Jimmy Kapata, he was there. But when I heard that this had happened to him, I realized just how much I needed him. He said, Levy said, to be president, I don't want people who hero worship me all the time. I want people who tell me that the best thing should be done is this and that way. Of course, if I don't agree with you, I'll tell you that I don't agree with you for this and that reason. But this wasn't happening. So I realized just how much I needed him. Those words are still available. I think if you check on YouTube, that video is available. For me, that's profound because it speaks to a leader who was yearning for constructive criticism from those around him. It wasn't coming. So what does he do? He begins to look outside in the opposition. He sees Michael Sata not as Michael Sata, but as a vehicle of constructive criticism to a leader who is receptive to it. For example, there are many things that Sata said that were malicious, but Levy picked out the best and felt this man can actually help me govern Zambia better, and he learned. That's the kind of leader that you want to have in State House. You surround yourself with people in the hope that they can advise you when you are wrong. They shouldn't tell you wrong thing just to please you. That position of president is very powerful. People can be intimidated just by the fact that they work for you. I look at the HH's team around. I know most of those guys. At a personal level, they are very, very good human beings. But I also know their limitation in terms of what they can tell him and what they can't tell him. They are not a problem. He chose them. If he really wanted people who are critical of his leadership, he needed to identify people, not youngsters like who are older than him, who end up being advised by him, but experienced, adult, educated, competent. They are there. You would have identified them and said, listen, I'm hiring you based on your competence, not your tribe, not your loyalty to me, but to do a very specific professional job of advising me. You could tell that was not the kind of a person is going to be in terms of leadership.
Thank you, Doc. Are you there? Hello, Doc. Oh, I'll call him back. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. We'll be opening the phone lines. We were hosting, a prominent historian, an academic, and public commentator, Dr. Sishuwa Sishuwa. He's given a very, very elaborate thoughts, and I've just lost him. Maybe he'll come and make his last remarks. The lines are open. You now can make your contributions. The lines are open. You can now make your contribution over the various issues that Dr. Sishuwa Sishuwa has raised. Let us discuss. Quickly begin to call. The lines are open. He's tackled so many things, and he discussed extensively this issue of Brian Mundwi. Let's just play Brian Mundwi's short video. The lines are open. Quickly call.
Zambians, I speak to you today having personally witnessed something I never imagined I would see in our beloved country called Zambia. Last night, heavily armed personnel believed to be members of the Zambia army came to my residence in what I can only describe as an attempt on my life. Shots were fired. My home was invaded. my family was terrorized. Honorable Mutotwe Kafwaya and a few others were shot at in my presence. They sustained serious gunshot wounds. I watched one of my colleagues and fellow Zambians bleed as gunfire erupted around us. This was not politics. This was an attack on human life. I thank God that I am alive today. And my heart is with Honorable Mutotwe Kafwaya and other colleagues who were similarly affected, together with their families, and every person who has been traumatized by what happened. I pray that God will preserve their lives, guide the doctors treating them, and give their families the strength to endure this terrible ordeal. This was an attack on Zambia. Let me be absolutely clear. You may attack me, but
hello, caller, please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contribution.
Hello, Mr. Ambassador.
Good day. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contribution.
Well, Ambassador, well, I would like to say that Mr. Sishuwa Sishuwa has actually been so great. Yeah, he has opened up our minds and we could see all what has been happening or what has happened, in these days. And it's very, very true. Now we know exactly why all this has been happening, so promptly that we all started getting confused. Well, Mr. Ambassador, my main contribution is we have spoken out through a ballot, but it seems as though our voices have just remained in a vacuum. We are being deprived of freedom of expression and many more. We are living in fear. We have become aliens in our own country. Where are we going? I'm just praying to our Almighty God to see through, so that we can win these elections. Otherwise, we are all doomed, Bamamba. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Hello, caller, please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contribution.
I would prefer that I withhold my name.
Yes, please.
But otherwise, my heart is at pains.
Yes.
Today to be called a Zambian, because Zambia has always shown that we are getting matured in terms of democracy. It is unfortunate that in Zambia, Zambians have always elected presidents and members of parliament through voting. But what we are seeing now, where we are seeing members of Zambia Army going into the homes of a presidential candidate, Mundubire, we are seeing them surrounding polling stations. We have seen Zambians today, they are not able to carry GN20. GN20 has become an offense to be found with a GN20. I have voted in Zambia's elections for many, many times. Unfortunately, or fortunately, all these elections that we have had, GN20 has been an evidence of what has transpired at the polling station. Today we have got an issue in Kanyama where members of NRPUP who were polling agents have been arrested because of being found with GN20. Now, honestly speaking, how does an election become credible if you don't have the GN20? Because GN20 is a document that has got the results that you use to tabulate so that you are able to do the calculation for yourself that you have won or lost an election. This is not starting from today. It's starting from the education sector. When you go into primary school, when the teacher marks, they give you that the marked paper so that you can be able to see your results and where you failed and where you've passed, and you are able to know whether you've passed or not or not. But today in Zambia, surely 62 years after independence, today a person with a GN20, you are arrested. Where are we going? ECZ should come out in the open on this matter so that they can tell the Zambians to say today it is an illegal thing to be found with a GN20. Bamwamba, this is scary. Zambia is scary. Everyone, no one can make a comment. Even now we are withholding our names because of the kind of the environment that we have in Zambia. Anyone who voices out, you are destined for prison, you are destined to be arrested, you are destined to be to be harassed. We have Honorable Kafaya. Now we don't know his health, we don't know how he's whether he's recovering or whatever is happening around him. We have Honorable Chisanga. It's very scary, Ambassador Mwamba. So my only appeal is to the Zambians that you have spoken. The voice has been heard. The most important thing now is let us not be scared of the threat of the bullet, the threat of being arrested. Being arrested, if our forefathers were scared of being arrested and being shot at, they wouldn't have liberated us. So it is now our time as Zambians to be able to protect our votes. And let us start speaking. This matter is not for politicians alone. It's for all of us Zambians. All of us are being affected by the economy. All of us are being affected by the load shedding. Farmers are being affected by the high price of fertilizer. There are a lot of things that are happening in Zambia that should not have been happening. And when Zambians raise these issues, it is not that they hate the government of the day. It is because Zambians want to see change. And when they say, stand aside and let us have this one, it doesn't mean you have been forsaken. Or what the Zambians are saying, at this particular time, we want President Mundubile to become the President of the Republic of Zambia. Thank you very much, Ambassador Mwamba. I know you are living in exile because of the same, but please, together, we can change Zambia.
Thank you very much. I have Dr. Sishuwa Sishuwa. We had just lost him when he was making his concluding remarks, but we must have the honor to bring him back just to make those concluding remarks. And, he was on the phone for 2 hours. We didn't use a video link. Likely he ran out of battery or something. Let me just get Dr. Sishuwa Sishuwa back. Doc, you are online again.
Thank you, Ambassador. Sorry, the battery finished.
Oh, I suspected so.
No, I was making the final points to say we Zambians should, really understand the importance of values. Nations and individuals fail, not because of anything else, but because of lack of clear values that should shape our conduct. And that we should also have respect for people's different stations. You are doing an important job with that platform, and I think that for me, I'm very grateful for the opportunity to feature on it, but mostly for the opportunity I've provided to many Zambians who don't have a platform on which they could express themselves, especially now. My final remarks is really to appeal to Zambians to be hopeful, to never give up. What is happening now is very, very bad. But it will come to pass, like many bad things. All bad things come to an end in the end. I'm genuinely anguished as much by the deplorable state of our country and the conditions of life for most ordinary citizens as I am, by the extent to which many have resigned and seemingly accepted the status quo as a given. many steps towards progress nowadays, are cheered as if they are major. It's like we Zambians major in minor issues and minor in major issues and turn minors into major issues. That poverty of ambition frightens me, I speak out in matters of governance out of love for my homeland, out of love for Zambia, out of principle, out of the belief that, we must dare to dream, to aspire for more than the little that we celebrate as triumphs. I don't have to. I can stop writing public political commentaries today and will not lose any penny because there are no benefits attached to what I do. I don't live, in affluence, and it will never be my aspiration to. I also don't feel poor, however. I think the former president of Uruguay, Jose Mujica, who said, poor people are those who only work to try to keep an expensive lifestyle and always want more and more. I lead a simple life, but I also want to a better Zambia because I come from that rural background where, I know so many, wonderful, talented people in rural areas that never had the opportunities that I got. I was one of those people, born in poverty, growing up in a rural backwater, very limited opportunities. I escaped by chance. And when I look back, I see many, when I got back to rural Zambia, I see many of my former colleagues who are still there, who could have contributed enormously to the country. I don't often mention my background in my public commentaries, mainly because I don't think it is relevant. Even when some people out there who have done nothing about my life and family history assume that I was born in privileged circumstances, or that I write to advance sectional interests of my non-paying masters, for example. No, I was actually born in the village. There's a village called Naritoya, village in rural Sinanga, one of the most impoverished parts of the country. The nearest public schools I attended, Ambassador, were over 10 kilometers away from home. It was in a Nalikwanda constituency. Ngwangwa knows this because it's a rural backwater. My mother was there, I grew up with her before she relocated to Kapulanga, which is an impoverished slum in Mongo, where no one should live, let alone raise a child. It's much like Chivoria, Zambia compound, Makururu, in other places. I largely succeeded due to the kindness of other people whose generous efforts, Ambassador, alongside those of my mother, who brewed native beer for a living, enabled me to complete my secondary school education at Kambole Secondary School in Western Province. After I finished secondary school, I couldn't go to university. We went to the social welfare offices in Mongo to say, look, we don't have support to take this child to university, but we think he can make it if you give him support. That is how the social welfare came home to examine our poverty. We were certified as poor, and then they wrote to the government. They wrote letters of support, for example. I remember one of them because I showed him. If you were nearby, I would have shown you on my shoulder. When I was studying for my grade 12 exams, the house where I lived, the roof-thatched house, but in terms of the roof and the wall fence, I was using candlelight, and one day I fell asleep while leaving the candle on, and it caught fire. It got through the books, and we were sleeping in those kind of beds that you make by digging something in the sand.
Yes, Doc. Have we lost him? Have we lost him? Oh. Okay. Let's take some calls. I think we are privileged that Doc has made his concluding remarks. Hello, Paula, please make your contribution.
My contribution, I will remain anonymous.
Anonymous? Yes, proceed.
On these results we are seeing from Southern Province, can we check how many people voted for an MP or all the MPs and compare them to the presidential results? Because you cannot have all the total for MPs 40,000 and then in a constituency presidential results 80,000. No, we should check on that. We should go back and check how many people voted for all the MPs, and thereafter check how many voted for the presidential candidate.
And in this election, we know that Southern Province recorded one of the lowest voter turnout. So those results are not credible. You heard what Dr. Sishuwa Sishuwa said. He's made it very clear that these are altered results. And we should not be ashamed to say so.
Yeah, at the same time, we should ask the Mwangala Zalomis why people who got the ballot papers for MPs and presidential candidates opted not to vote for MPs but voted for the president. Why should we have 40,000, like total for MPs 40,000, and then the presidential candidate 50,000? Why should that be in only one region?
Thank you very much, my dear brother. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mwamba. We miss you in South Africa.
Thank you. Oh, you're calling from South Africa. That is very good. Ladies and gentlemen, we are hosting Dr. Sishuwa Sishuwa. He was giving his last concluding remarks. If you have anything, I know you could be watching the altered results that are being given, but for those that are live with us, make your contribution just now. Good evening. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contribution.
Ambassador, tumina kuketwe.
Mkwai.
Ambassador, problem tukwete. Ngatwalole shefintu. Twaswata privilege ya kutamba ko wama comments ya Pasadik conference. Ngatwalole shefyo fyalende fintu before. Tabalapanga suspension na after. Umuntu kutamona kwati. Nanguni events yimbi. Ngatwalolesha ama statistics. Ngatwalolesha ama trends tafilepanga po sense. Ngabalefu aya fibe ati irigo, bafisende fe irigo. Noti ifishiri straight bafipange irigo. Awe. Ifo kukopa belt to abafe straight. Irigo ni irigo. Ligo na yena iwe fe irigo. So nomba fira bare stef ya kusending ati ba army baba funya kuchingola ku stronghold ku copper belt ku zakire bare nyonga ma votes awe to akana ifwe tulibana BMT ifwe tulibana kopara ngabale fo senda straight ba ambassador ba senda straight noti abantu bale bepaya echo ndetotela lesa chakwe bathi fifyo sefire chitikanisha abantu badisa abakunse baletamba nombopo tusakamene nipali apa kwebati fyonse fe balechita ba UPND awe fiena kulumba kukabwe fichitike bushe kuti walanda firife fair abasoja bafunishe nibanani bapele instruction iria elo udia we no pele instruction nisha lela ndira state apelele bamundubire ichalo bushe chakwe chakupera chakwe nangula chabantu ero abantu lya balesala alela ndefya msangoyo bushe nish natu babantungwa freedom ilikwisa ba ambassador ichichalo bachisangire fye na filafine fye baisiyo baba pele mumutende na mumuchishi efyo balatula baletula ba HH konzoko muri mwishwe fyati muletula mwishwe fyere kwa Yesu Kristu muletula mutemwe mufulwe muchitechashani ishwe fyati muletula because tapari wasumishio mulopa pari isi okwe batiwe tawasende chano tapari wala ndire pa mashiwe yayo tule umfwanomba okwe batuja wena text mupere chista bampelele bamundubire chisho cyo barufyanyo cyo twala kanina bamakebi chisho cyo barufyanyo cyo twala kanina twakana fye ba ambassador ifo turi bakutotera na manoyo lesa mipera na bashuwa shuwa lesa vike pona yambi.
Thank you very much,
Paula. No kupokolo le chalo.
Thank you very much, caller. Thank you. Thank you. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contribution.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mwamba.
Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're please switch off your other device, caller, because I can hear myself in the background.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, yes, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contribution.
Of course, I'll call myself as anonymous. I just want to say one thing. It's really unfortunate what is happening in our country, and President Hichilema inherited this country as a peaceful country, and it's really unfair what he's doing to this country. And I'm sure he knows, that's why he sent those soldiers on the streets and the police and the cadres, UPND cadres, so that everybody is intimidated. Of course, we wouldn't want to do the Kenya way. We wouldn't want to do the Tanzania way. This is our country. But there is no choice now, because I think that's the only language that he understands. So I think, of course, on the Copper Belt and Lusaka, these are the, these two places, of course, Brian Mundubile has gotten a lot of votes. And this is where the problem will start. So they're announcing now the results. I don't think they will announce tomorrow, because they would want to declare him as winner, as Dr. Sishuwa said. So it's really, really unfortunate that people's will is going to be thwarted like this. So it's really, really unfortunate that we can see, and that a lot of people who have said directly that they have been altering the votes, especially the presidential vote. Southern Province had 40%, 50% rate of turnout of those who voted. And that's the reason why we are seeing 40,000 voted for the MP, but 50,000 voted for the president. And it's in all the strongholds. And maybe the similar thing has happened in these other places, in the NRPUP strongholds. Now, of course, people have the Gen 20 forms which were verified, and that's why President Mundubile had the audacity to say he has won. Of course, he didn't declare himself, but it was because of that. And the international community, they are here quite all right. They don't have any other role other than just advising and recommending, but it's not enough. Even if they talk to this man, there's nothing that's going to happen. So, unfortunately, people died for our independence, and a lot of people have died along the way. A lot of people have been arrested, but the power of the people, they are the majority, and there's no way he's going to reap where he didn't sow. We gave him 5 years to run this country. He failed lamentably. So you have no choice but to vacate and let other people take this role. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got two more callers waiting. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contribution.
Yes, good evening, Ambassador.
Good evening, ma'am. Tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contribution.
Okay, my name is Banachanda from Kasama.
Banachanda from Kasama, Landenipo.
Mkwai awe mwe bantu bakwalesa tule mune fresh tikalelo pove twavotela. It is a very sad state of affair looking at the way things have turned out. But Ambassador, the one thing I want to find out is where our partners in this process. Who do I mean partners? I mean those who have been like the presidential candidates who stood in this election. When you look at them, they're all quiet and left the fight to just Brian Mundubile and Makebi and them. There's no one who's standing up with them, because this is not for Brian and Makebi alone, but it's a fight for everyone who was in this race. So they should have been standing up with Makebi and Munduwile. And for me, the issue is, Ambassador, is it because, when you see the trend of the results that have been coming out, they were getting zeros, and now we see them getting some numbers here and there? Is it a one way of just shutting them up to say it's okay, they've lost and they've just withdrawn from the whole process? And I think as a nation, we need to stand up and fight for the democracy that we are a nation that is a beacon of democracy in the southern African part of Africa. But we are seeing this democracy slipping under our hands just like that, which is not a good thing. Ambassador, I also wish to state that as a citizen, Vanachanda, from Kasama, when you see incidences happening like what happened yesterday, where we saw Brian Mudubile come even on TV, on your live stream show, and he speaks to the issues that had happened, and then we see people saying those were staged kind of arrangements. I tend to wonder what kind of a nation have we turned into if you can ask somebody to come and stage such kind of an incident, and whatever he says, we say, no, it's not true. It reminds me of the time when JJ was abducted, when he told the nation, and we all said, no, he staged that. Even today, people still say he staged that. I don't know why we've gone with the definition of Ubuntu in us as Zambians. We've thrown away that. I think we should be at a point where we start thinking, who are we as a nation? We are a Christian nation. Zambia is built on Christian values. The moment it was declared a Christian nation, let's follow that. I know we seem to have lost all the principles of Christianity, the love that we're supposed to have as a nation. Ambassador, it's a very sad state of affair. And for me, I'm crying. My heart is bleeding because we've lost who we are as a nation, our identity. Who are we as a nation? And for me, I wish to make an appeal to the president of this country, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema. Sir, the time you came into power as a president, you told us you are going to rule this nation based on the true values of what? The rule of law. Mr. President, are you able to exercise that rule of law and let there be no selective application of law? We've seen a trend, Ambassador, where only those who are aligned to the opposition are the ones who are breaking the law. I saw what happened when Mkandila stood to just ask a simple question. What happened? Today, I've actually read on your platform where I'm seeing that even his accreditation to the Totally Center has been withdrawn. What about the gentleman in this morning who was shouting in his pajamas? Has his accreditation also been withdrawn or revoked? I think these are the things we should be talking about, and it pains. As a country, we want to just isolate issues, and we tend to play a deaf ears and blind eyes to the issues that are happening. It's very, very unfortunate. Zambians, let's rise above these politics and let's practice love, and let's Ubuntu prevail in us as a nation. Ambassador, that's my appeal to the Zambian, and also an appeal to the president of Zambia. Thank you, Ambassador.
Hello, caller, please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contribution.
Mwabombeni wa Mwamba njwa Munkonge, mwabombeni mkwai.
Mkwai mwabombeni wa Munkonge, landen poyama.
Awe wa Mwambecha kwa lila povena ndemi totela, mulimu mule womba ukuru sana. Nakula totela feri onse, nisale msunga fyo mutende nge fya mpera manu ishta yonse. bamwambofo ndefu okurandako shakwe bati natumwana ko bafuma abaye chechi bali tumakarufyanya okwe bati bahisize tibakwate chance ya kusita declare twabe fyongo twamwana okwe bati bali mutuma again twasa mwana okwe bati batuma masoja bakwate ku access ya ma G20 tule mwana twasa mwana nomba pariofu bachita kwefya kwe bati at least tumaliza out suture moneka ko bwino kumwabo bambo kupunda orubiro nomba nde pisha ko ba ambassador bushifu twarakonkanya fyo kutamba ama stage yonse bale panga abapange fya pabafikire what is the next stage bushifu twarachita poshani orondero mbako na kuba neso ama candidates bambibo bachitire declare as a winner mweba ba same district n'abanene baraba nene gutabara chita declare mwaya afika ko mwabashita ko support mwabeba konengo ndoyo ngachipitamo koko bati mwagombera chafamo beba fyaba ko batoyine kali nabampunda na mbo kusefyawe katuisa kama nini mbona bamwambaya mbi ama constituency ndi aliko yabiri umbi bamushita declare same district umbiena tiyo festival erolera edio wa ambassador ine Sishuwa nacho ningalanda bushe wa kasonde mwenda na ba mukandira techi mukwate kofe chance yako batumina koko pako batindi mwabe pusha ko pandi vota tuishive yaramari zawo tsibale punda pali ino nstatufure to akwata ko idea panono onga ale staff ya iso kufuma kulia bapokerera bena abantu besu bonse baba kulia no ishiba na ngubale ishibo ko bato kulia eshire na bapokerera kwa aliso bakwata ko information kuroko ya lefu mana ngutabara staff efili fyonse na ngupali ayo bapunda yonse kuri bari ama representatives besu ushe pari ko sofa pare po bamwene apa ko batapa pare moneka ko kongama so kutina romba ko ba ambassador ni mwatumina ko bakasonde mwenda mwabepusha kwa question yo mwinga bepusha ninji shwana ko tito wasekeramo ontumwalisho wo kuipusha bwino sana bifota turapango rutampuro ruronse kumano yeso no kutontonkanya baraba liko kulia abatuiminine ko ngabatwe bako sofa amali zawo sofa yare ingira nofe yare fuma inshuti barengana ifoko twa indera pa mu kutontonkanya tiri mbifo twa yasana mu kutontonkanya kanshinishi bare sita ndo fintu bwino so ndero mbako ba ambassador kutuma batumina kwa mafoni batupere kwa ma insight pari karwa kashita ndeko seresha kofi abanesu abapokereri abashirika na bena tete bambe fe bambo kuma pantu bambe kuri urawe no mwenso ba ambassador bare pera chance iya kwebati na abare iba ifya kwiba nanguba MP bachuwina baruso murandwa kumona kati abasoja na besa abasoja tapare fo tourist akatuchite maintain fifine barandire okwebati bamundubire n'abalitinga n'abawina ama elections mu ma polling stations not to win by declaring so tufunya po ile negative mind twararekera shani kabwarara o ture mona tarefo okutibire cyo tukwete fo twambera okuranda tawe kabiri na twebirawe tufunya po yo mutima bamundubire nanguba abakonka babasta intimidate bachita bashani baipa abantu ile vote twagombere di kankara sana baire printira mapepa ya kutupa impya shangira moshengi nishwe na Zambia twinga titira fe give up chipiri bari bazayeri abo bene ngani bazanyere ngani bashitani ba komanda abo baingira benchi to na Zambia yikuru kuchira pa muntumo uraona mupashi twate fe wa kushipwa ko bati declare ama results kulingana ba mundu birefo bawinine nangu bawina 52% nangu ni 51 futa tukwete nsto azrongazi abena Zambia fo barefo akuchinjo obuteko mumone ba Sishuwa fo barondorora nga twapanga mistake nishitapale fo twinga chitaroleshe na fo barondorora kwambira pali ba mwana wasa bonsa ma president bari abarepanga ko chintu chimo na mwasafika pali barungu bari panga ko chintu chimo cha kukure fintu na shani nombaba pali branch pali aba songa mwasarolesha pali ba mundubirereswa abatupere ba mundubire barera ndapabena Zambia industrialization which means wa mundubire na bamakebya panga bari tekere bari maki imwe benga bike akukava 5 years ya onaika because apana turusa mumona fe barondorora ba Sishuwa, which means Zambia ari irendera apasuma na papene so ba echecha abafenga bantu Zambia panga na isera ko kulingana na foundation ofo ya ikara nomba bena tabavulire foundation bali amba fe okura forobora fe katwishina fe bachita nafo tuingara ndefi abo fe ifi amumutu ababura foundation epo democracy ya ingirire kwali basatu kufikana lero bali chechi bonza panga tule kunda tao senti mupere ko second term it's fine since if in firawuna nomba bamba fe ukura katwishinga kustora ndekura pasawara fe fin so katubike tukoseva Brian Mundubire ababene tusalire bachite announce ukwe bati ba Brian Mundubire na abawina tuyumfoma na abamukukura yo batuma amasoja bachitashani vote is power twali votera ba Mundubire so tuchitefe support ba ambassador Ndero Mbako itendi ko ba mwenda na muri batonga ube pshepo 1 or 2 questions kokwe bachitibe ko at peace. I submit ba Mwamba.
Thank you very much. Hello, caller. This caller has been waiting for some time. Please tell us your name and where you are calling us from and make your contribution.
Thank you. Good evening, or is it good morning for some people? I'm calling from Manchester. My name is Robert.
Robert, make your contribution.
I don't even know where to start from. After listening to what Dr. Sishuwa said, and the only thing that came to mind, and I will say something here that probably has not been said. I think, Mwamba, our government is a terrorist government. You know, and I would urge people to check it out, for themselves what a terrorist government does, and if Kalipaba Mwamba, is you sit down and you could see and hear Bakaunda's words coming. And that's where we are. These guys, on their campaign, they are the ones that have been saying, Bapompwe, Raisa Bapompwe. But the reason why Tabarifairo Kuchita concede is, Eba Pompwe. Now we show for Bachitide. That's why they don't want to leave. Eva Pompwe. So now Beshbatanga Bafumapo, Emran Dubakwete, with their kidnapping and their terrorist behaviors that we've seen, Bamwamba, you can see even those people that died through gassing. It's this group. Terrorizing the Zambians. Nokulafrika Abantu. Bambi. I'll give you another example. This same Tabukawano, Yolanda Watnagwatembarara Punkanwa. He said, would rather give power to the army than to give to these boys. It's there. So whatever is happening here, Tabukawana said it. So now what's happening here is the army are taking over this country indirectly. But we are officially under dictatorship, and it's a terrorist organization that is running our country. And the reason why, and I've always said this, and people keep on coming here and saying the international communities. The international communities, they do have a tendency of coming in when it's too late. Then they come in and at your most vulnerable position, that's when they come in, because then you know you can give them anything. It is very, very important, like what Sishuwa said, for us to know, to understand our values and try to start defining who we are as a country. Because once we start loving our country more, if you where you have people in certain regions are voting for him, and then the other regions, despite the manipulation, you could see the normalcy there. This guy has completely divided our country with his terrorist behavior, and I am scared. If at all this whole plan, they're organizing with that Ziali, whatever they call his name, Bamwamba, we're going to have more people claiming asylum. And it will be a normal thing for Zambians to be leaving the country on political ground and political asylum. Because no one will be able to say anything. They will be so aggressive and they will gag people. And if you see Tabu Kawana, the way he's moving around town, you know, anything happens, it's like he's become like a reporter. Now imagine if they can behave like that after just being in power for 5 years. Imagine giving them another term. Mwamba, this is a terrorist organization. And I would urge people to Google and you will confirm yourselves that all these abductions, the terrorism, the fear that they are subjecting the Zambians, it's a terrorist organization. And as Zambians, we should not depend on these Western worlds to come to our aid. We've seen they're too quiet. They're not saying anything, whatever deals they've made. But it's up to us now as Zambians to find a way of how we can fight this together. Because we've seen it that we are on our own. Thank you so much, Mwamba, and may God bless Zambia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we continue with the cause before we cross over to what ECZ is doing. Let's just get a few calls. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contribution.
Good evening, Ambassador.
Good evening. Please tell us your name and make your contribution.
Anonymous on the line.
Anonymous, make your contribution.
I just want to ask something from... I know you have the privilege of engaging these trans people. I want you to maybe answer me. Have you tried to engage them on how they can rebut these forged results that are coming? Because it's like they keep letting them announce, and in the end, it will be the issue of going to court, which will be too late. So the best time to do that is to rebut just now, as they announce and they engage them. So this is wrong. But again, it's like they're letting them just announce and then they depend on, we engage later, which has not been helping anyway. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from. Hello, caller. Hello, caller. Oh, we've lost the call. Just take this, probably our last caller. Hello, caller, please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contribution.
Thank you. Name kwa kapota.
Endita.
Thank you. Abena Zambia wansinami posha nami koselesha twa ikoselesha msene mfumu Yesu Kristo. Tongfa ya londo la basishuwa sishuwe fingi sana situntu sana. Shakche we muntu we wash wingo winga temu kwikala muchishinga na mchalo chikote mutende. Those are very good encouraging words. Information is ituntu ikankala to put you to a level of ukwishiba ifutufile kwikala mchalo. Number batch lift kupenda my election ama ballots kula batch suspend ba namayo bali aba kutungulule sha ECZ into baishile chita lift ida ban babwesha watonse wesubali mutamfya mulyaka pantu achita like Iceland that au bad reading ama numbers yambi pantu ali kwata ida baletila G20. So no kufundwa twafundire twasambirire kwate nama G20 tachafire sana pantu bale chinja nalitambako video imo ya kumansa na kumbalambala uko mulemo mbali mulela ndu kulanda ati awe kaliture ya mkutwala kwa yambia ma G20 ya mkutwala kwa yambia ma G20 I questioned ngabala ya twala koshani but na jimona fila bale na amuna Bazalumi sibalela ndoktilati. Uyobale mkalipila. We are reading. Taulefo kumfwa. Fumwe. Mufunya ni pase. Awe na chine abashidi kaba mufumia. If I feel like in Japan, I know my elections. If we're to Amanapo Mwaba Shidika, poor my elections, yeah, and below Kubaka after independence, Zambia, and below Kuvota in the 70s, late 70s into 80s. That one Monapo, Abashidika Baba involved. Padiwa Kaunda, that one Mwenepo. Everybody to a level to Kuma polling stations are Quebati, Dutch Palamoku in Gavasana security, Nishpika Lusaka. That one Mwenepo Kwaba Shidika. Kwali waka polling station akabakula ku State House. Takwa with bakaunda bali kwita sana ba paramita bali abale mina musambali afimu tishanshani. Ngakula my elections, those guys were never seen nearby. Kwali afi ba policemen. Chapa. Na vote bali kwata name futimwe. No mbechi ticket ya kuleta abashirika pa musebu. Bushefo Zambia yala bamwe na Zambia twalike kalashani. Pantu ya my elections. Fianza vifilelangisha vino kuneleni G20 na mutsa equip abantu information bonse na twishimo kuba tukukwatichi kuchipembelerechi bakwata but ingavashika kula kune kuma offices ya Kalamba ukuli chibanza chikalambe cha ku utungulira ko kupenda kwa tukatotu vala tanfi abantu balakana ati how it is. So how are we going to take this mwena Zambia chala bashani nibaka inde balatwali lokuteka na corruption ni monekenfe pambilibili elonge fishi yakwikata ba mundu bire ngefi abantu tumfuire tatushiba kuli ba mfuya katatu twe tatushiba kuli ba George Sanga tatushiba kuli ba mukawa tasira lungu ba musfuya katatu twedi ashidi mfuiki bali mlase polo tatuishi no bantu bizambe yashani ba president tabafumi netu say anything bali chintu bali fe focus na my elections to bawine babeni bakateka okutitikisha abantu ifu muchalo awe pandeni kwa mano tumfefe tuwala ikalamuchi chino chalo tetitwika lefi pata ni yaku Uganda pata ni yaku Tanzania aikata abantu akaka abantu eloyona mayo aliye mkuba sworn in as president bahaka inde balasha abantu michifunga ati pamande bakala basa swearing as president. We want peace. We need the peace that Zambia has always had, and it's not very well. It's an oasis of peace. Nakubalungu balu ushire bali pelamaka. Bakaunda bali bakaunda. Vena na bubalu sakuli bachiruba, but vola makamulumendo wafuma pubaya. Namba imoba kaindo kusa tufisha kuli inuishta yakabati muachisa spend election munapo, and I do follow elections in different countries per time. Kula general elections. Suspend counting of ballot papers. If there is contention in other polling stations, those contentions are managed, but kulaku central ground, kulaku security, takoli disturbance in counting the results as they are flooding ama ballots. Don't never suspend palusakata pali no wasi hapo. Kuno kuma mpanga kwa kaputa na mungombe twalitamba bale toba gate bale punka suspend voting. Elo kunokule pendas we lift the ban. How do we take it chintu? Icha kuchinja pantu 5 years twaba muna baka inde yonse kuchinja mafunde. Bafisha na kuchinja mafunde ku ECZ. Suspend the counting of ballots. Basa chita lift. Bakaka na emitime yakobati teki umuntu na ka G20 apepeshe koko. Kumkana na bakwata ma G20 yaboko. Mwena Zambia na ipisha koktila. Tuwala ikalashani. Chala bashani. Fish tuwalachita. Pantu neyo ine ya kutuwale polo kungande ya msiviliani. Lechita kufe contest ama elections. Taifa tuinge kalefe te Zambia yo. Kuve koku pepefya ibela na tote asana mkwae.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Hello, caller. Please tell us your name and where you're calling us from and make your contribution.
Ambassador, I've been doing haphazardly. This is David.
David from Mongu, make your contribution. We are live on EMV.
Yes. Ambassador, I've been asking you for the contacts of our host, which you haven't provided. There was reason why I needed it urgently, because I had a feeling that will appear on your broadcast.
Oh, Dr. Sishuwa Sishuwa.
My own. Yes.
I'll send him your number.
Yes. Because I wanted him to polish up on a very important research, which I've been doing. It is a span of 140 years. It starts from Cecil Rhodes to Tiny Rowlands. Now we've got Tony Blair. The British influence on African leaders. The pattern is the same. the result is the same. In your conversation with Dr. Sishuwa, you mentioned the British ambassador. Why she's been so silent on the human rights? One, because Tony Blair is playing a critical role in the governance of this country. Tony Blair has an office in State House or a community house. What is the role of Tony Blair in our current administration? Secondly, in SADC region, you have the only country which approved Starlink is Zambia. It was the first country to approve Starlink. Starlink is having problems in Namibia. Starlink is having problems in South Africa. So Starlink had a very big influence, Errol Marx, in the administration of Donald Trump. So how do you expect these two weak powers to talk about the person who's facilitating them? Those are issues which are there. These are issues I would like Dr. Sishuwa Sishuwa to give answers. Even you are a researcher. You know you wear too many hats. But when I send these things to you, I expect you to polish them and give us the informed issues on what's currently happening. So there's no point of questioning the British ambassador when we know that Tony Blair has a big influence, even in the EU. Who is Tony Blair? We know the history of Tony Blair. Tony Blair, I don't know even what to, I've got even a clip of Robert Mugabe describing Tony Blair. We know who Tony Blair is. What role is he playing currently? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And colleagues, we need to go. We'll be back with the newspaper, the breakfast show, and then unless there's something urgent coming from ECZ, we might conduct an urgent broadcast with my colleagues. But thank you very much, and we will see you in a minute to conduct as many live broadcasts in this period as possible. Yeah, just a minute.
You are interrupting me. Can you ask it twice? No, you can't tell the police officer like that. You can't tell the police officer like that. So, excuse me. Mr. Muremena will do his job. That's all. Okay, so Mr. Muremena will not proceed. I'll be here. Mr. Muremena is proceeding. Yeah. So, you are not going to proceed. We have to go and do the recount because our agents were driven away from here because of violence which is outside. So I'm not going to allow that.